to look right as well. Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Wait a minute. In my head, it's gone totally wrong.
Fuck my laptop. Hi. Mate.
Hey, Dave.
Hi. Talking music, I take it.
What, try and recreate wrestling theme tunes?
A game of that, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I was desperately trying to get the laptop up and going, and
hopefully we will show up, and we should now be live. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello. So the first thing we always do on anything, let's just check. Say hello, guys. Hello. Oh, I can hear you.
That was me.
Okay, can I be heard as well? Can I be heard?
But you came up on that one.
That was you, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Okay, excellent stuff. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Superkick Mania Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is David Postansky, and once again I am joined by Samuel George.
Hello everyone, I am Sam George.
And DeGreeno himself, Dave Green.
Hello, yes, I am Dave Green, he is Sam George, he is David Postansky.
I am indeed. Although Sam and I were just debating whether or not I actually am. Because I have many names. How do I switch off the managed participants? There we go. So, today, Dave has selected a subject for us to talk about. So, Dave, do you want to introduce what it is?
Yeah, well, I thought as we've been talking last few weeks mostly about the big leagues and about WrestleMania and all that sort of stuff, I thought we'd go to the world of independent wrestling for this week. And with everything sort of going on in the world at the moment, one of the sort of big shows that got sort of cancelled right at the point where the coronavirus took hold, and particularly in Ireland, where it's one of the first big cities to really put themselves on lockdown, full lockdown. It resulted in the cancellation of this year's version of this event from OTT Wrestling in Ireland. So they were going to have ScrapperMania, which is going to feature, among others, John Moxley in the main event. And they had to, but obviously the week approaching, that was when lockdown happened, so they had to cancel this massive event called ScrapperMania 6. So I thought we'd have a little look at last year's big event on St. Paddy's Day last year, ScrapperMania 5.
So, just out of interest, who was Moxley going to take on?
He was going to take on David Starr.
David Starr. Oh, okay, yeah.
The OTT World Champion.
Yeah.
And among other many big names who are going to be turning up, but Moxley was the big name that had been his first international European independent date since leaving WWE and joining AEW and New Japan and all that. But that was one of his rare India he was going to be doing, and we'll sort of probably talking about the show. We explain sort of why, because I think the show is and like generally the OTT crowd is a really big sort of selling point for this particular company. And but we'll go into that as we go on to talk about the show, I dare say. But yeah, they were going to do ScrapperMania 6, as I say, and OTT very nicely on the weekend it was going to happen. Put the last year's ScrapperMania on their on-demand service free, so people could watch last year's instead.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Very quick thoughts. I can say I really enjoyed the show overall. There were some things which I will give some critique. So I'll be honest though, I haven't seen tons and tons of perhaps independent wrestling at this level. This isn't a promotion that I'm familiar with, other than perhaps passingly have heard the name or may have seen something about this or that on Twitter. And for the most part, I thought it was a really well-produced show. But there are some things where, and the main focus of any critiques I will have will just be how I felt the show could have been presented slightly better, or some things having slightly different logic. Because obviously I don't know all of the storylines going into it. But yeah, overall, very impressed. What did you think, Sam? Just some general thoughts.
Yeah, much of the same. Right from the word go, I thought the opening match was a nice way of getting us kick-started, really sort of pumping up the adrenaline and stuff like that. I thought it was very good from start to finish. Obviously, there's always little tweaks here and there that could be made, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the show.
Yeah. So, Dave, have you just seen this now when they offered it for free online, or had you seen it a year ago?
No, I saw it, and when it went out, I dip in and out of some independent companies, sort of like on-demand services, and some goes on with like Progress Wrestling, for example. Some other people in New Japan, and some go to other ones like OTT. So yeah, I sort of came out because it was there's a lot of, as I say, a lot of storyline stuff going on, and I'm sort of dipping. I try and keep up with companies I like. I try and keep up with their stories at least, even if I'm not necessarily seeing every show they're putting out. It was because OTT is sort of like one of those sort of companies that sort of had a lot of a buzz going about it sort of in the early times. But yeah, this is, I say, is a culmination of like quite a few stories, and obviously some big names being put into the show as well, which they customarily did a lot of the time. So yeah, this wasn't the first time I'd seen the show, but it's nice to see it here.
Okay, so without further ado, let's go to the first match. Anything anyone wants to say about just how the show opened? Like, it's a few days since I watched this, so I'm trying to remember. Like, it was a nice big crowd. I think they mentioned about it being a 2,000 or 3,000 seater.
Yeah, that's right. National Stadium in Dublin, and they've run that venue a couple of times, and said that sort of OTT was sort of like originally sort of conceived as like this sort of like a wrestling company that adults in Ireland could go and see and enjoy, because they do a lot of family sort of style wrestling, but they haven't had anything sort of like really sort of like tip-top league and since sort of like days of Irish women's wrestling. I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody, but
they used to show it. Do you remember the wrestling channel? They used to show that. So
they had a few people on there, including one Sheamus O'Shaughnessy, who was a big name in that one. Obviously, today's Sheamus, but it was like the big Irish name that went out there. So it's National Stadium, and a good couple of thousand in there, and absolutely raucous crowd. I'm lucky enough to have been at an OTT show in one of their smaller venues they ran, and the crowd is just absolutely bonkers. I love it was like we said last week about when we were talking about The Rock. We were talking about the Rock Hogan WrestleMania match, and it is the crowd that makes that match, in my opinion. And it's and the OTT has the sort of like the raucous sort of support.
Yeah, do you know what? Just before you joined, sorry, Dave. I was going to say just before you joined us, and I was saying to Sam, I said that the crowd made this show. I think. Yeah, like the atmosphere of it was great. One thing I just thought in terms of like presentation, obviously if they want to pack the house, they can pack the house however they want. But there was such little room outside the ring. I felt that with no barrier, if they'd just taken out that front row, then they could have had more space around the ring, which would have given the wrestlers more room to work and stuff like this. And also, just in terms of there being no barrier between the audience and the wrestlers, I feel like it made it feel that was the only thing from the beginning presentation of it where I was like, okay, so this is the indie style look. They've got obviously the big Tron at the entrance ramp and stuff like that. It looked really good. So who was the guy who's like did the opening intros? Do you know who that was, Dave?
So I don't know who the ring announcer's name is, but that's sort of like they traditionally open with these guys. So it's the commentary team of Angus McAnally and in this one, what's his name? Toby Kelly, who was the guy with no socks that I was getting chanted about.
Yeah.
There. So they traditionally had like the sort of like the face heel and announce team sort of thing. Although they did sort of like the Ireland versus the world sort of thing, and the whole build to the main event was everyone getting behind the Irish hero Jordan Devlin.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where even the heel announcer is saying Jordan has to win tonight, etc., getting the crowd support, even like keeping the heel sort of thing, saying let that be the only thing we agree on ever. And moving on from that, which I really like, sort of final line for him. But yeah, that's their so those two are the commentators.
See, and that's good. You don't always get a heel commentator, face commentator dynamic nowadays.
No, it's kind of nice to see in some respects, but there's I think if you watch any other sort of like VODs of other independent companies, they can focus on that sometimes and having a heel for the sake of having a heel because they want to be like the Attitude Era, they want to be like the whole sort of like Jerry Lawler, Paul Heyman sort of character and things like that. Sometimes, unless someone's really good at it, it can get really irritating. And Toby Kelly was sort of is newish to the sort of like that role as far as the point that they were at this show. Because they had another guy called Don Marnell, who's a really, really good commentator, but also played like the heel character, who'd left a few shows previous to this. He was sort of like thrust into this sort of role. I think commentary, the OTT's commentary is really good. I think they're very in depth. They're very like keep along the story of it and sort of really build up the guys in there.
Yeah, I like the commentary. Just as one of our famous segues that we always end up doing. Favorite commentator or commentary team, either of you?
Go on, Sam.
Oh wow. I think typically I'd go. I've only really seen WWE. I've not seen a lot of other stuff. But I always really enjoyed having Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler together.
The classic.
But more recently, I've thoroughly enjoyed Tony Schiavone and Chris Jericho.
Tony
Those two
Schiavone
together on
and Chris
AEW
Jericho
have been absolutely brilliant. They've been making me laugh the whole way through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm loving that at the moment.
Okay, Dave, who do you go for?
Well, because I'm very old.
Go for it. I hope you're going to say who I want you to say. Go on.
So I'm obviously first watching WWF. I absolutely love Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. I think they were such a good pairing. Obviously, they're very close in real life as well, and it really helped their dynamic and everything like that. The whole dynamic between those two, they're probably my favourites of all time, I think. But in the sort of like the Attitude Era sort of time, I like Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, but I actually really like Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. I think they were a really good team, even though they only did like the sort of 2001 sort of invasion sort of era. I think that it was a shame they couldn't have gone along with those two as a tandem. I thought they were very good. And I think in more recent years, controversially, I actually really liked going over to TNA. I really liked Don West and Mike Tenay. I thought they were a very good team. Wow. Underrated, I think.
Yeah, I always liked Mike Tenay because he was someone that you trusted, really understood it. He really presented it as if it was like a technical sport, and I really did like that. But the fact that neither of you mentioned Jesse the Body Ventura, I was quite disappointed, Dave. I was really hoping you'd give a shout out for when we were talking about like heel commentators. Bobby Heenan possibly is the greatest of all time, but there's something about Jesse Ventura's voice where when he would say insults wrestlers in the ring and stuff like that, I absolutely loved it. Jesse Ventura, gotta be.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I think obviously when I started watching it, he wasn't like doing it full time at that point until he rejoined WCW. So only had sort of like the old VHS Silvervision tapes to sort of hear Jesse doing
Okay,
stuff.
Dave. Last segue I'll do here. Do you remember? Did you see then? If you, I can't remember if we said before if you watched WCW, but do you remember Jesse Ventura's arm wrestling challenge?
I didn't see that.
Oh,
no.
that was amazing. It was won by Heavy Metal Van Hammer. But anyway, never mind. We'll come on to the actual show.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. Wasn't there a thing between Van Hammer and the guy named at the time Vinny Vegas, who we now all know as Kevin Nash?
Yes.
And like the thing where he knocked it, and then as soon as he lost, he just whacked Van Hammer's head against the table.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay, so regardless, we're going to come on to the first match. So the first match we have is a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match. So I'm having to go to my notes here. I've got it behind me if anyone's watching on the video version on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. But I'm going to have to go to them because I don't know. I'm not super familiar with everyone. But we've got Angelico and Ray Horus. Am I pronouncing that correct? Versus The Best Is in the World, Davey Vega and Matt Fitchett against Aussie Open, Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis against Club Tropicana, Aiden Epic and Captain Sexay, or Sexy. Sexy, rather. Okay, what did we think of this? Anyone?
Before we do the match, what did you think of everyone's entrances? Because obviously it's being independent wrestling, everyone gets their own entrance music or gets to choose their own entrance
that was
music.
interesting.
Like,
so what was it? What was that song? It was like Westlife or something, wasn't it? Who had that?
It was so
Besties with you on a mountain.
Savage Garden.
Yeah. Oh yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
The
Okay.
Besties entrance, which they have their own little choreographed bit to the chorus, and it's weird how it happens in wrestling. Sometimes they have some teams or some people will just choose the most random music, and suddenly everyone are like, this is such a tune, and everyone will just sing along with it. So
yeah.
No, so I love that.
I was going to say that was something that that surprised me. Not having watched tons of independent wrestling in recent years, probably since, other than clips I've seen on the internet, since the time of the wrestling channel where we just get all of this random quality, varied quality stuff from all over the world. I was surprised to hear some of the theme tunes, thinking, well, how have they got the rights to that?
Well, I think in terms of rights, it's dependent on how much, what level they can get up to. Because I know in the early days of like Progress Wrestling, who I'm a regular at, or was a regular at, that they would be able to, they'd be allowed to like put entrances out and things like that, no matter what the song was and things like that. So people like, for instance, like Will Ospreay would come out to like an AC/DC track, and such like, for instance, and other some of that. But anyway, once Progress was sort of like getting a bit higher up in sort of like the echelons of popularity and everything like that, and then when they started doing stuff in WWE, that's when they sort of had to implement sort of like different copyright laws for their music. So they basically, to make themselves more affordable, they just couldn't get to a certain level, a certain output level, and that is all dependent on what sort of music you can put out at that point. So then they started using this sort of like copyrighted music, and it's a bit naff now. But the OTT, I think, they somehow are able to bend a lot of rules, like in terms of the music as well, and the fact that in this show you've got guys that are contracted with New Japan, WWE, NXT, Ring of Honor, and all some other companies that are all mentioned in this little Irish show, which is very bizarre.
Yeah, but this is from 2019. When did NXT UK properly begin? Was that 2018 or was that 2019? Because things dramatically changed. Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
So the timeline of this is just after the first NXT UK takeover at Blackpool. It's about 2 months after that, and this is about a couple of weeks before Volta versus Pete Dunne at one of the US takeovers.
Yeah. Where
Volta beats him for the NXT UK title. So it's just a few weeks before that. So the NXT UK contract situation, which affects lots of indies over here, is very much in effect. But as I say, for some reason, OTT are able to get around these. It's really bizarre.
Okay, so what did we think of the actual match? Anyone? Sam, what were your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, I thought it was a good way to kick off the show. It was like straight away, it was high intensity, high adrenaline. There was the point where I think it was Angelico. He did a dive over the ring post in the corner,
Yeah.
out into the crowd.
Okay, so this is an example of one of the things where I was saying that I feel like they could improve presentation, and this isn't something which is unique to this show. I see it on so much. I see it constantly on AEW, where in this match there was a lot of points where when there was going to be tope suicinas, or suicide dives as they should be called, where people were just gathering into the onto the outside. And, like, the guy in the ring was, like, hesitating, waiting for people to get into harm's way. And you can just sort out the logic so much better. So it's an impressive move. And this was probably, the criticism which I'll come out with most of anything that I've got across the entire show, is that there were some brilliant ideas, but the dots didn't always connect. And it could be improved. Perhaps it was camera work, if people can see what's coming up. Don't show the guys on the outside waiting and then leaning on each other. If two guys are brawling on the outside and then someone's flying, then they're in position. But if it's two guys just sort of leaning on each other's shoulders, waiting for it, then for that takes me out of it just a tiny bit.
Yeah, that can depend on like the level of the workers as well in some cases too. So it's a bit of a mix in this sort of matchup. You've got the Irish guys that come from Tropicana, probably the ones who the least experience. In some places, sort of showed, but they're a little bit not quite as polished as the other guys. I've seen that plenty of times at indie shows when you sort of see something's coming up, and then they have the security suddenly like mounting around the person or people around as well. If it's one person like going to take the dive, they'll be definitely extra safe and have like a bunch of the ring crew people that get around there to absorb the dive as well, which we'll see.
Yeah, we see that in this show. Particularly, that is a note I made on a later match. Okay, so Club Tropicana, as you mentioned. So you say they're going to be probably the least experienced in this.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a really inventive move they did, which was, I'm trying to think if there was a name for it, but it was like a leapfrog into a double DDT, which was very impressive. That was a great move.
It wasn't like the smoothest way of doing it, but it's really unique, and they've got it's a weird little pairing, these two. They're really funny. So what OTT do, they have these shows called contenders shows.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like for the more locally based people, the newer talent, and things like that to build up upon. And I think the Captain Sexy character sort of came about when another guy had been tricked by his tag team partners into thinking it was a fancy dress match or a fancy dress show or something like that. So he just went out and got a fancy dress uniform, called himself Captain Sexy. And but then there was like, no, it's a joke, we weren't doing fancy dress at all. But he just stuck with it. It was like, I think this is pretty good. I like this. And then so you got like a partner, it's part of a trio actually, that the other guy's not in the match obviously, but and then they've got like the Aiden Epic to say there's he's sort of like the perennial loser. He's sort of like just looked at as the sort of like, they used to have a guy that used to like do a really big ring entrance for them and things like that, build like Captain Sexy's entrance and really build it up.
Well, like a ring announcer, do you mean?
Yeah, so like really like big ring entrance for him, ring announcer for him, and there you go. And his tag team partner, it's just like Aiden's just a loser on the truth, but it's in terms of the comedy of they're a very comedy team. But but what did you think of the super sexy slip and slide?
Okay. Oh no, actually, sorry. I'm glad you mentioned that, Dave. This is my problem with a lot of these shows, and so when I saw this, and this is the opening match as well, I was just like, oh man, is this going to be 3 hours? Now I like stuff like this, and I appreciate it. I'm not so unappreciative of just stuff for entertainment's sake that I can't enjoy it. But in the opening match with this comedy act, this was the type of thing which I could honestly do. Like I joke, and even like last night when we were doing the Extreme Improv Extremed comedy show, I was joking about Joey Ryan and things like this. And to me, this was on that level, and it's something which I think you don't need. More isn't necessarily better across wrestling. Not every promotion needs to have a Joey Ryan style chain move. So in this, I think there were all 4 opponents, or how many is in this team? Six opponents, sorry. 6 opponents, like basically daisy chained or whatever in the corner.
Doing oops upside your head.
Oops, upside your head. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then one just dives out, and the amount of time that it took to set it up, there was no reason why any guy just couldn't stand up and just say, "Oh well, I'm not going to be part of this." And then it was the diving headbutt into one of them, and the idea, I suppose, is that there's a ricochet effect, which goes down the line, and as funny as it was in the moment, doing it with such a huge chain of them, to me, it was just like, it was too silly. It was, if there could be a way where if this was in a battle royal and like 4 of them threw down 4 very quickly and someone instantly dove into it, but there was just like, when you set something up and it takes 30 seconds or something just to do one thing, there's no reason why the others couldn't get out of the way. So stuff like that, I feel, exposes like the business as being a bit silly, which I can appreciate because I like wrestling, and when there's something silly in it, I can be like, oh well, that's quite fun. But it's the kind of thing where if I was gonna be watching this with someone who isn't a wrestling fan, or if they're watching wrestling for the first time and this is the opening match, I'll be like, yeah, I watch. This is what I watch, and it's the kind of thing where it's a little bit too hokey for my taste.
I think it's fair enough, yeah. Obviously, it's a move they usually would do against 1 or 2 of their guys.
Well, see, you do it against one, it's great. But the whole pendulum effect.
No, I see what you mean. I thought it was good fun, but but it's Aussie Open. Usually are very good guys over here, but they're this particular match.
Because this was World Cup, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, they call it the World Cup. It's like for 4 international teams, and so Australia getting a nice little win with their finishing move. They didn't actually say what it's called, but the finishing move they use is called the fidget spinner.
Like it? Nice.
I think for Australia they should call it round and twist, personally.
I like that. Good reference. Okay.
But like Sam said, I think it was a good fun all action opener, which these sort of shows always need.
It does. Sam, do you have any final comments on it? And shall we actually give this star ratings out of 5 for these matches? I wrote down a few, but I don't know if I've got them for everything.
Yeah, sure.
Give it a go.
Why not?
Yeah. As I say, I thought it was a good opening. I really, really enjoyed the fun element of it as well. I sometimes think that's a criticism I have with like the bigger promotions like WWE. There's not enough fun in it.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously this match, it had the fun side as well as the hard hitting. It had the athleticism. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd probably give it a solid 3.5 out of 5 as an opening match.
I think I would give it 3 just because. I don't think, even if you took out some of like the hokiest spots, I don't think this would ever have been a 5-star classic. But I would give it a solid 3. But for me, they could have got this to being a 4-star match without the bits which I've touched upon already. Just bits where it's obviously guys setting up to be attacked. I think it was actually on the next match. Yeah, one of my notes for the next match. Don't want to muddle it up. But that and some of the silliness, if they could have made it a bit slicker, then to me this would have been a 4, but I give it 3.
Yeah, I'll give it a gentleman's 3 as well. I think it's a perfect place of an opener, like that, all action, nothing on the line as such. They say it's obviously it's the World Cup match, but there's no actual World Cup to be won as such. So I'll give it the 3 stars just for it being like a match that had nothing wrong with it. Did its job.
Okay, fantastic. We'll move on. What was the next match, in fact?
Next match was six-man tag. So Rapture, Charlie Sterling, Charles Samuels, and Zach Gibson against More Than Hype, Darren Carney, LJ Cleary, and Nathan Martin.
Yes. Okay.
I don't mind starting off with. I love the fact that Zach Gibson literally couldn't speak at the beginning. He wanted to deliver that promo. They had to keep turning his microphone up because the crowd was so loud. As we said at the beginning, like, the crowd made the night, and that was one of those moments where I was just sat there laughing because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
This massive combination of just like years and years of him doing this sort of thing on the independent side. I saw this in its initial stages. He started doing this in Progress Wrestling, and then just sort of took it to everywhere else, and it just became a thing of just boo this man while he's doing this speech. This whole thing, and that's the loudest I've ever heard it from that perspective. Brilliant.
Yeah, so just in terms of the story as well, because it was mentioned, and then obviously it was the big thing with the finish. So if I understand this correct, so More Than Hype were on a losing streak. What can you give us a bit more context to that? Just because, yeah,
it's not a huge. I think they pretty much gave it. As far as what I can remember, they just were on a bit of a losing streak. So so the three guys that, as I say, were sort of like brought up in the contender shows and sort of gained a bit of just a lot of popularity and such like, and they were constantly like winning trios matches. And I think they were just in a slump. And I think in the show before this, they may have lost a six-man to one of the guys from the Rapture, Johnny Sterling, and two other guys we'd never teamed with before. That's all I've seen as that, oh God, we've got to meet a trio that hasn't teamed with each other in the past, and things like that. So they went on to do this match. The Rapture had previously been the tag champions in LGBT, and because OGT sometimes do this the Freebird rule of if it's a trio tandem, then they can do the whole Freebird thing of Freebird from that trio as the tag champions.
Okay, let's just segue off onto that just 1 second. So the Freebird rule, anyone watching, listening who doesn't know what that is, there was the tag team, the Fabulous Freebirds. The Fabulous Freebirds, I should say. Which there was 3 of them. And just like we've had with the New Day and other things in more recent years, there may be an occasion where they'll decide that any 2 members of the 3-man team can be the defending tag team champions. Never quite made sense of how that became a thing, other than when they say it in a modern context, they'll just say they're doing the new not the New Day, they're doing the Freebird rule. But how is that ever something that's been allowed? Is there an origin to it? Do you know?
I think it's just the Freebirds. I think because they were just called the Fabulous Freebirds, it was a case of, well, the 3 of us are the Fabulous Freebirds, so you've not actually said who was going to be in the match.
But
so
obviously, only 2 of them could have won it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a weird rule, but I guess maybe they may have. I don't know, it's a complete guess, but maybe if someone on the trio couldn't wrestle or something like that, they just had the third person stand in. Yeah. And then they decided, well, we'll go with this. And then ever since, like, people like New Day and Sanity and groups like that have sort of done that since then. Sort of like they're doing the thing.
I'm trying to think if back in the day, did Demolition had Axe Smash and then Crush. I've got a feeling, did Demolition lose tag team titles with Crush, or did he join later?
Yeah, they won at Mania 6 with Axe Smash, and then Crush came in. I think in real life it was to sort of like to help out Axe because he was sort of like on the wane a little bit. He was losing sort of like he was getting run down for the schedule and everything like that. So he was sort of on the way out. So that's why they called Crush in. But so it was Axe and Smash that won the titles, but it was Crush and Smash that lost them.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we've segued off. So let's bring it back on. So I'm not gonna beat down this point too much, but this is where I had made the note. So, Gibson's the bald guy, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
at this point, he's NXT UK Tag Champion.
Okay, so unfortunately, and so it's unfortunate to say this then, but this, when I wrote down my notes, was one of the worst spots I'd ever seen, ever, of anything. And what happened was, there was a big schmoz with everyone, but at some point, Gibson got hit, along with one of the other opponents, and I forget who at this point. But Gibson turned over his opponent, I think quite possibly onto his face, rather than that he was going for a pin. Either way, Gibson had been the guy that had just been struck. He turned, and they sort of both landed down. Gibson then turned his opponent over, laid on top of him, just so that they could be splashed off the top rope. The positioning was so wrong. And it's something where it's like, if you get your positioning that wrong, you can't just think, well, I'm going to move into position for the next spot, because it's in front of a live audience. It's not something you can fix in editing later. You just have to delay the spot, change the spot. If you do something like that, that was the thing where I was like, that was so bad. You just clearly did the intention of what he did was nothing other than to put himself into harm's way of this guy who jumped off the top rope next. So I'm done saying about these kind of spots, which I found were a little bit hokey, but they were the couple that I wrote down. And that one I just said, when I wrote it down, I said that was the worst setup of a spot I've ever seen. But you now say he's an NXT Tag Team Champion, so.
He was at the time, yeah.
Yeah.
He was at the time, yeah.
Oh, he was at the time.
Champs, so.
Well,
So, yeah, so I think
that was unfortunate then, Gibson.
Yeah, I think it's things like that can happen to anyone at any level, really, and especially if it's guys like more than height who are all at this point. I think are all either. I think the oldest one of the three is 20 at this point, so they're all like 18, 19, 20 sort of years old. So they're all very young guys. But so I think in a case of getting to the point where they need to be in a position for the guy that maybe doesn't have enough experience to sort of adapt, maybe is trying to help him out in that respect, I guess.
Yeah,
it does look crap if it looks crap, it looks crap. I'm sure they knew that.
But it's like, again, I was just gonna say on the points of like if he'd been attacked, if the idea that he's dazed, if it just looked like he was trying to, it wasn't his. I don't think it was his tag partner. If it is your tag partner, make it look like you're trying to help them get yourself into position. If it's an opponent, you're dazed, make it look like you're going for the hit. Just something. Don't just look at your opponent on the top rope and think, oh, I'm not in position, and climb into place. Because that was the only thing that happened there. Other thoughts on the match? Otherwise, I really enjoyed the match. Nothing. It's not going to be a match that I'm going to remember for years, but it was a fun match.
Yeah, perfectly all right. And as I say, it's the way to get Northern Height back into sort of like the winning ways, because they obviously end up in the match with their nice little what they call the Northern Height activated Canadian destroyer move, where one of them was up on the top of the other two and jumps into the pile driver, which is quite a nice little finish, I thought. It
was a nice finish. And they is this where they say about like, because when he landed, it wasn't the cleanest landing, but they said about he'd spiked his head, and I didn't see it so clean happen quite as clean as that, but because he seemed to bounce backwards, didn't he?
That's that thing you were saying earlier about camera angles and choosing the right angle. And if someone hasn't got the right angle, they have to go with whatever they've got. And with these sort of like things, they do try and put them out as soon as they weren't broadcasting live or anything. They would have.
But they're going to shoot a show like this as if it is live, basically, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. But they'll try to cover up as much as they can do. But yeah, Sam, we've been talking for ages. What did you think?
That's all right. No, I'm thoroughly enjoying the different insights. I thought it was a really good match. I thought maybe the heels just sort of carried it a little bit. Maybe that's down to the fact that, obviously, as you say, more than hype for very young guys are still very inexperienced. But yeah, as I said, very much enjoyed the entire match, and I just love the way that they reacted to Zach Gibson the whole way through.
Yeah, it's also a nice little story of the fact that not only they're like trying to get their losing streak like back the other way into winning, but it's like the guy Nathan Martin is not the guy with the really bushy long hair, or it's not the guy with the really short hair. It's the one that's in between. Had that sort of moment early in the match where he was sort of cornered by all three of the guys, but he doesn't care, and he just still fights and things like that. And it's just that nice little story of them just coming back from the adversity of these three very established guys and veterans.
Yeah, fantastic. So, how would we rate this match? I would give it a solid 3.5. I enjoyed it more than the opener. But yeah, so again, it was a match where I would say there was nothing spectacular. I liked the story of underdogs and a losing streak and stuff like that. So yeah, I felt this was good, and it will elevate those guys.
Yeah, I thought I'd give it a 3.25 maybe not quite as high as you.
We're going to go to 2.25.
I think in terms of my enjoyment, it's sort of on par with the opener, but the story of it obviously was more important. The story, in terms of the match, in terms of where they were going with it.
Yeah, I think I'm slightly opposite. I probably preferred the opening match to that one, so I'd probably go for about a 3 for the second match.
Okay, fantastic. So that'll take us. Okay, so hang on a second. Hold the phone before we actually get to the next match. There was so basically we had a year before the Firefly Funhouse match, which I'm just gonna never stop talking about. There was this extended sequence, and when I was first watching this, I was like, this is a bit lame. And as I'd said, I'd watched these first. I think as well, this is a show which I enjoyed. Maybe I just got more into it as I went along, but I enjoyed it progressively more as it went along. But after I said there was a couple of hokey bits here and there in the first first couple of matches. When it went on to this extended sequence, at first I was like, "Oh, this is pretty rough. This is pretty bad." But then by the end of it, I was like, they have got so many ideas in here. If I can actually just read out what I wrote down. So it's not all complete, but it's just like, if you were to describe this to someone, I was like, backstage segment was weird, with guy with fake grey hair and an actual murder, because the guy was shot, and the blood goes onto the screen. I was like, and then there were lame smoke effects, and they passed out. Then I said, I loved that there was a dummy that got thrown, and it was clearly a dummy. Like, I'm not even sure if it was a dummy, it was just his clothes probably stuffed with something. Loved the dummy getting thrown. Was the Firefly Funhouse match. And then there was a dog, and the dog got, I think, kicked or something.
Yep.
And then they dropped a C-bomb, which I found a bit shocking.
Yeah.
But, okay, this was a bit bad. I was like, I'm not sure who the guard was. At first I thought it was a woman, but then it's a guy, isn't it? Right, never mind that.
Yeah.
Then a midget with, and that might be inappropriate, a little person, don't want to be inappropriate. Then a little person with an eye patch turned up, who was then... At first I thought they were suffocating him, but then they threw him in front of a car, and then he got run over. And I missed, actually, someone else's head got smushed, and then and then it ended with Jesus Christ Superstar playing. And
so for context,
you guys go.
I think we're going to need it.
So this is like the third of like the series of films that these guys called the Angel Cruisers that did these they did these wild entrances. So about maybe a year ago, previous ScrapperMania at the National Stadium, they did this big sort of entrance thing of this them trying to stop the National Stadium being blown up by Mo Cabré or something like that, who was a pastiche of a guy called Joe Cabré, who was the booker of OTT. Who is the guy that gets shot at the beginning of this scene? That's why I said he wouldn't give us a title shot. That's why he shot him. Let's say there's three like films of this, and they're all on these big shows, and they sort of have steadily been like them trying to stop the National Stadium being blown up and basically get the National Stadium to do their entrance and stuff like that. The small guy, the little guy, is a fan. He's a guy called Rob, who I've met a couple of times. He travels over here.
What's the deal with the eye patch? Is it just a gimmick?
It's just that every villain has been part of the extended family. So it's been an extended family. This guy. That's why it's called Mini Mo. So the first guy was Mo Cabré. Then the second year it was the guy who was the lead announcer. He was the part there. He got killed as well. And they all steadily get these ridiculous things. And yeah, it is hokey, and they're supposed to be hokey because Angel Cruz, who's got the silver hair, is a big fan of the sort of like, I can't remember how he describes it, but the sort of films that are trying to be serious, but the special effects are just that bad and the editing's that bad. You can just tell when they do a little cut to an obvious dummy in the thing before it gets blown out, that sort of thing.
So in fact, I'll just give an example. It might be called Rumble in the Bronx. There's a Jackie Chan movie where I think a woman is thrown out of a window, and she's in like a blue dressing gown, and as she's falling, it's clearly a man. It was brilliant. Anyway, I'll go back. Keep going.
Yeah, but anyway, that's basically it. It's the third and final one of their sort of big entrances they did for the National Stadium, and it's funny because it's a guy called Rob who plays the villain in this one, who gets thrown onto the car and all that, and he's the small guy that's actually in the crowd next to the entrance steps. If you wonder why Ozzy Open were like kicking and attacking the small guy in the thing, that's him. It's just a fan that happens to like have a lot of friends in the who are backstage and everything. So
that's great.
That's cool.
Okay, and so the actual match, who was it? It was the Angel Cruisers. 4-on-3 match. Yeah, Angel Cruisers and Hurricane Helms. How did he figure into being here?
It's just a name that got booked, and they brought him as this match.
He's a superhero. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, exactly. They needed a superhero to beat the evil team of Justy, Sammy D, and Team Prick.
Team Prick, which is the amalgamation of Peter and Rick. I can figure that one out.
There is a long story behind these sort of matches. So Be Cool was part of the Angel Cruisers, used to team with Justin and Sammy D. They were a team called the Gymnasties. Their whole gimmick was that they were all sort of like they were all in gymnastic gear and all this sort of stuff. Like that. A series of things happened where Justin like turned on both of them. There was a big thing. They were the tag champions at the time. It sort of cost them the belts and all that sort of thing. Then about a year later, Sammy turned on Be Cool and sort of joined back up with him and things like that. And Team Prick used to be the bodyguards of Angel Cruz. And the previous show, maybe 2 months before this, they basically got coerced by Justin to follow him rather than them. And they basically literally called Team Prick because they were called Peter and Rick. He went, what are your names? Oh, Peter and Rick. Okay, you're Prick. Okay, cool. And they were just this comedy sort of tandem of Angel Cruz, who's the ultra star, who's so utterly in love with himself and things like that, thinks that he needs a security team with him at all times. So he's got these young boys to be his team, his bodyguards. And yeah, they just sort of did their sort of turn in the previous one. This whole sort of, it's all been more of a comedy sort of storyline than it has like massively seriously. But,
well, Dave, it's all right if you want to do comedy as long as you like keep it in the backstage segments, and you wouldn't ever bring out like a lawnmower in front of the actual arena.
But again, this is another thing of Angel Cruz's things. Angel Cruz kept getting from underneath the ring, kept getting more and more violent weapons out. One show he gets an axe out. Next show he gets a barbed wire bat that he attempts to set on fire, but it doesn't work. So he just goes, right, everyone, pretend it's on fire, hooray! And then he's carried on with it. So yeah, basically he's a bit of a psychopath, and yeah, got the lawnmower out. It was fun.
Yeah, Sam, what were your thoughts on the actual? Well, or if you want to say about the pre-match stuff.
Yeah, so I thought I was on the similar wavelength to you at first. When I saw the backstage segment, I was sort of like, oh god, this is getting weird. And then someone openly got murdered, and then another person openly got murdered, and then Rob was run over by a car, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit weird now. Then all of a sudden Hurricane Helms came out of nowhere, and I was like, wow, okay, let's go with this. And it was at this point I was talking to a friend of mine about wrestling. They've never seen any wrestling, so I was sort of explaining. I was like, look, sometimes people don't really get into it because they see a man dressed as a superhero and engaging in combat, and they think to themselves, it's just a massive joke, isn't it? And then they brought out the lawnmower, and I was like, oh god. I couldn't tell if it was shown sort of his hand got cut off or if it was just bleeding a lot or anything.
Okay, so I think what he was trying to do, like the sleeve thing, because mostly you could see sleeve. Yeah. So I don't know if he was trying to do that, but there definitely was some fake blood on the knuckles. Yeah. So it was between the two.
But yeah, I thought it was a funny match. It was violent as well. It's sort of quite nice to see someone being a psychopath, but not in like just a sinister way. Sort of like Dean Ambrose was the lunatic fringe, and he was like supposed to be a genuine sort of psycho.
Yeah.
This one was actually meant, with comic effects intended. So I quite enjoyed that side of it as well.
Yeah, the other main thing I wanted to just give a shout out about this match is just before it finished with a swanton bomb rather, and before he just called out Jeff Hardy. Did you miss that? He literally before he did the dive, he got up there, and whereas Jeff Hardy would be like like this, he went Jeff Hardy, which I thought was brilliant. Yeah,
it's just the daft sort of stuff. I mean, I first heard of OTT from a show they did in like 2014 or 15, which is called R10, and they actually had a match, a 6-man match. It might involve some of these guys in there. Actually, now I think about it, and it had a match which had no less than 3 or 4 run-ins from various actors from Father Ted.
Wow!
Playing their characters.
How'd they get that?
The guy that had no willy. So they tried to kick him below the belt, and they said, "I've got no willy," and sort of carried on. And then had one of the characters that was a cokehead throwing coke into one of the guys' faces, which didn't work. Just amped him up more and things like that. And then had the boring priest come out and register the slowest referee count you've ever seen in the world.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love this company. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So they've got a history of doing daft matches.
See, and as well, like bringing out the Hurricane, it's nice for the audience. He got a really loud pop. In fact, he's still good in the ring. He kind of, see. Here's the only thing when I think wrestlers like this, and it's when we've spoken about before, someone like Chris Jericho reinvents himself. I think even a character like the Hurricane, when he comes out like this, he looks basically like he did 15 years ago, except for he's thicker, he looks somewhat out of shape with it. And I think that's where someone like him, or someone that's got a gimmick like this, which kind of perhaps won't work as they get older, if he changed his look so that he's still the Hurricane, but it isn't that he's literally wearing the same tights that he did when he was like 40 pounds lighter, I feel like it could adapt, because just like how you might get Superman that's suddenly old Superman, or you get old Batman, they don't still dress into like the same tights. They'll do something to change the look to justify it. And I think something like that would, like, obviously he still wrestles very rarely. In fact, was he just someone that was just furloughed? Was he? He was with WWE, yeah. So it'd be interesting.
I think this was like his little farewell indie tour. He's sort of doing, sort of wrapping his career up.
Quite possibly. I think he'd been at either All Out or Double or Nothing or something, hadn't he? And then WWE started taking everyone, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Like in the gimmick battle royal thing. Yeah. So, but either way, so yeah, it's nice to see Hurricane. It was good to see that. That was a nice surprise I didn't expect. Okay, what are we going to give that match star rating?
I mean, it did its job for what it was supposed to do, sort of like this whole thing. If you were a fan of the show and everything like that, you knew the sort of weird history of the place. I would advise you guys to look back at some of the promo videos they did for this sort of stuff. It's like proper like horror movie stuff they would bring into it and things like that, and all sort of weird sort of thing, and the other films they did. But as far as the actual match, I can't really go higher than 2 stars.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it's certainly not going to be like a...
No, exactly.
For all time.
It wasn't a 1-star match, but say it being anything more than a 2-star match would be kind of unfair to anyone that gets a 3. You know.
I'd probably go 2.5. I thought it was a lot of fun, as well as sort of a little bit psychopathic, and there was the point where they chained up one of the guys to the ring post as well. Which was,
left him. He was
just
going,
left him
hello, I'm telling me.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
I thought it was great.
Chained him around the neck, right? I'm trying to remember because it's a few days. The only thing with that, once again, is he could have just reacted more on his face as it was happening, because he didn't look like he wanted to stop it happening enough. But yeah, good stuff. Okay, we'll move on. What was the next match?
Next
David
match
Starr and Dan Barry.
David Starr and Dan Barry, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thoughts on that?
Do you want a history lesson into this one?
Yeah, go for it.
So the whole thing was like Ireland versus the world. So Dan Barry is a guy that it's an American guy, but he's obviously like Irish American, that sort of thing. And this is only like his maybe second or third appearance at OTT, but he's like incredibly popular in Ireland, as you probably tell from the reaction he got for his entrance. He teams sometimes does this thing where he teams with another guy in the States, Team Tremendous. Basically, his whole gimmick is that he thinks he's a cop. So it's not like he himself thinks he's a cop. His character thinks he's a cop, and things like that. So he does the whole Miami Vice sort of like the shirts and all this sort of like stuff. And it's sort of a more comedy character. Yeah,
I was going to say, my notes of when he came out is I said I'm not sure if he's meant to be someone that's escaped from like a hillbilly prison. But he definitely got like a strange look, he looks like a character from an early 90s, like Walker Texas Ranger. You can imagine Walker Texas Ranger going over to like a tough guy gang, and he would have been the leader.
Yeah, he's a total pastiche of that sort of thing, and obviously like buddy cop dramas. He thinks he's in a buddy cop drama, I think is the idea of the character. But it was sort of like due to wrap up his sort of wrestling. He's a comedian as well on the side, so I think they'll do more focusing on comedy and things like that back in America. But he actually said that his first time in OTT got such a massive reaction, and for the time he came back, that he sort of decided, I'll do another year or something, and he's maybe didn't exhibit it so much in this one, but he can do some surprisingly agile things. It was seeing him do some stuff in other matches that really quite shocked you. But the main history of this match is mainly due to David Starr.
Yeah.
This one, so he sort of is part of the story going into the main event as well, which we'll touch on later. But it was a few shows before this that he was in the corner of Jordan Devlin when he lost the title to Volta, and then they had a tag match. And David Starr's had this sort of rivalry with Volta for years on the independents. It's basically, they've had an in-ring rivalry, and Starr just cannot beat Volta. No matter what happens and how close he gets, every time they've gone one-on-one, Volta's always been the one who wins. And it's been going from promotion to promotion. Started in WXW in Germany. Don't know if either of you are familiar with them. But it sort of started there, and it's gone back and forth all over the world. And they've kept this story going between themselves in other so that it's sort of like an already running story. So there was a match where Starr was teaming with Jordan against Volta and Timothy Thatcher, the ring camp team, and there was a point where Jordan hit his finish on Volta, was about to pin him, and Starr pulls Devlin out of the ring and costs him the win, and then they end up losing the match because he's so obsessed with wanting to be the one to beat Volta. He couldn't stand back and look and see Jordan do it himself. He had to be the one to do it. And that sort of caused a rift between those two. They had a match at the previous really big show between this about 3 months beforehand, where Jordan pretty much destroyed Starr. And that sort of has led to this sort of thing. They did this whole thing where Starr has got Irish tights on there with the word, I forget what it's called, Dilshad, I think that's, I don't know how you pronounce it, but that means, what's it called? What does it mean? I forgot what it means. Loyalty.
Okay.
It says loyalty at the back there, and he'd worn these tights in the match against Devlin in the previous show, which got a massive thing. Starr's very good at doing his research and working out what's going to get a reaction out of certain crowds, and especially this show being on St. Patrick's Day, he not only wears those tights, but he also comes out to the song "Foggy Dew" by the Chieftains and Sinead O'Connor, which is a song about the 1916 Rising in Ireland.
Right.
So it's a very politically sort of historic song that he comes out to because he thinks he's really the real hero in this sort of situation. And you see the reaction by some people. There's a shot of that girl when that song's playing, and she's just going, "No, this is wrong. You are out of you're out of order." All this sort of stuff. She's really upset with Starr when it comes out to that. But that's basically sort of Starr's basically had a lot of stuff going on into this one. And he's been put in this match simply against a guy that fans absolutely love.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the match itself. Sam, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good match because I've always been a massive fan of high-flying wrestling. So to see quite a technical match as this one was, sometimes I can find technical matches a little bit on the boring side. But I think with Dan Barry especially being as experienced as he is, some of the smoothness and the cleanness between some of the maneuvers was so good that it was quite appealing to watch. There was obviously then the big spots where they actually moved the fans out of the way so they could do the suicide dive out onto the chairs. Yeah. And obviously there's no way of taking that in a way that won't hurt as well. So it was one of those ones where they put their bodies on the line. It was hard hitting. It maybe went a tiny bit longer than I would have liked it to, but at the same time I don't really think it detracted from it too much. So as I said, I thought it was a really, really good match between the two. And David Starr probably was the rightful winner, knowing now the history of the match as well. So yeah, I thought it was a very good one.
Well, yeah, David Starr, I think, he's the one. He was clearly the one that's got like the future out of this, like clearly. And when you talk about whole retirement, and I just looked up about Dan Barry, and he said that he retired in February. So when was this? February last year, in fact. So was this?
This was March last year.
Okay, so it wasn't quite his retirement when I'd read. So there was a little bit more. I agree. This, when you get more technical matches, I love technical wrestling. If I could watch, and I think if you have a balance, if you get a wrestler who's like Daniel Bryan, or if you even like go back and watch like Bret Hart, he's a technical wrestler, and even if you watch Shawn Michaels, who compared to Bret Hart was the high flyer, there's not tons of high flying necessarily with a lot of wrestlers, but who are more technical. But when they then suddenly they've got a big move, they've got a big spot that they do, it just makes it really more engaging and exciting match for me than when you watch something which is all flips. So
yeah, it's always interesting with me and having watched David Starr quite a lot. I mean, I've seen him have better matches than this one, but he's really good at adapting. So if you see, the more you sort of see Starr, and the more he can do comedy matches, he can do like ultra serious matches where he's the underdog, he can do ultra serious matches like this one where he's the overwhelming favourite and all that sort of stuff. And he can do all sorts of stuff. So it's weird for me to watch him do the dominating role, as it were. So there's a point to this one where everything like is so measured, but like you both say, there are points where he does like stuff like that, like the bit where everyone's sort of getting on his case, and then he just simply goes out and does a suicide dive onto Barry and just gets up and says, "This is your guy. This is the guy you're cheering for." And at that point, he's rightly in massive control for it. So for me, it's not my favourite match of either of these guys. I found some parts, like you said, Sam, I think it could have been wrapped up a little quicker. But it's. I think if I'm looking from it from the eyes of people that have never seen either of them before,
yeah,
I probably would be impressed.
So I'm just going to check that this is right. This was the first singles match on the card as well.
It was.
First singles match on the card, and so in one sense, I'm going to say fairness to them, just because it can, after where you have like 3-on-4 handicap, 6-man tag, fatal 4-way, like 8 guys in the ring, suddenly to go out there, this was more of a storytelling match. It was more obviously one-on-one. It makes it more personal between the two. This was an example of a match I got more, because I don't know these guys. I got more into it the longer it went on, and in that sense, it sold me both of the guys the longer it went on. I didn't mind the length of the match. And like in my head, I didn't even remember it. It wasn't a short match, but I didn't feel like it dragged at all. And especially when you say about Dan Barry, he was retiring or whatever. He looked kind of a little bit out of place in the match compared to his opponent, but he was still like cracking out, like you say, about suicide dives, there was one point where he goes for a suicide dive and he gets blocked. There's another point where I think he hits a top rope head scissors or hurricanrana or something, and it's just like when you've got a story where like two guys, they're going to every trick they know, they're going to like they're going to the bottom of the barrel, they're going to their reserves to win a match. I really like that storytelling in a match.
Yeah, no, that's actually it's fair enough. I say, I think, in terms of like just measuring out and not having a balls or walls or like just constant action match, and like you say, a storytelling match where they're doing the high stuff, but they're actually letting it breathe.
Yeah,
like you say, that I've forgotten about that until you mentioned that, David. That point where Dan Barry looks like he's about to fall off the top rope and then just jumps up into the hurricane off the top, which was just a breathtaking moment. And like you say, they just let it breathe and let it happen. So it was a really good point of the match. So actually, I think you two convinced me this is a better match than I remember it being. I probably just started warning from having seen so many stars over the last few years that I'm just used to a different style from him. But actually,
exactly. And I think that's a really good point you just bring up there, Dave. So, like, if you've seen a lot of matches that someone's had, and then you see something which to you is like, well, it was good, but I've seen better from that person, compared to someone who might see them for the first time, like a first impression, it can go well, it can go badly. But for me, I was like, okay, this match, sold me, particularly on Star. I was like, okay, yeah, he's good. I like this guy. But if he's had better matches, then this just perhaps, doesn't give the same impression on you as other matches of his has. But yeah, what would we give this star rating wise?
I think I'd go. Sorry, carry on, Dave.
Sorry, go on, sir.
We're so British and polite.
They just love the lag. They love the lag, don't you?
So I would go probably 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a really good match. One other thing I will say is a count of 20 to be on the outside is way too long, especially considering that the gap between the ring and the front row of the crowd was literally centimetres. It was never going to take them that long to get back in the ring. Count of 20 was too much for me. But as I say, 3.5 out of 5 overall.
That's an interesting thing, though. So a 20 count, like I think New Japan has a 20 count. Do AEW have a 20 count now?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like is the idea that we want to see matches end in a count out? Is that the idea? Does having a 20 count mean that it gives the wrestlers more opportunity to do stuff on the outside without it always being coming down to the count? It's this very interesting point. Just in terms of a dramatic device, you don't have that count out danger, but so few matches end in a count out anyway.
I think that first of all, I agree with Sam, 3.5 stars for me as well. But yeah, I think with that, I think in terms of 20 counts, I think it's a case of are able to get more done within the confine of an actual rule, because there's so many times where you think that there's so many brawls you see in matches that have regular counts and things like that, where they are brawling outside for absolute ages, the referee's chasing after them, going, no, come back to the ring, come back to the ring, come back to the ring, and all this sort of stuff. And then they'll slide after about a minute and a half, I'm going to put the 10 count on.
Yeah.
And then that's it. They've been out of the ring for absolute ages, so I think that's more a case of trying to be more credible within the rules of the match.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, like, I would give this a 3.75. I'd give it a 3.5, but if we can give it a shade more than that, I would give it a 3.75. It's not a 4-star match, but I was very impressed with it just watching, especially after 3 matches in a row, which were lots going on, lots of people going on all at once. A lot of them who I didn't know. This, I felt like I can remember what's going on a bit more. I can understand and take in these guys. But yeah, what do you give it, Dave? Or did you say?
3.5.
3.5. Okay. So next up, what did we have?
Miko Satomura versus Martina.
Yeah, Dave. What do you think of this, Dave?
Yeah. So I think they handily had a video package to sell this match and sort of like the history of it. As previously done, Martina's much like Morgan Hyde earlier, she's in a bit of a slump. So she's known as the Session Moth. I don't know if you guys are aware of the terminology of Session Moth.
No.
But as the Irish sort of version of basically a girl that is like drinks all night, parties all night, that sort of character. So she's been like a bit of a comedy character for like a long time. But she's in the sort of like couple of years she's been in OTT, she's gone from that sort of like comedy sort of like character to this sort of like star, and she has had some stints going over to Stardom in Japan, like working them for a few tours and things like that, where she's like worked on her skills, and she's a much better wrestler than she used to be.
Yeah.
Nowadays, and as she said in the VT, this was sort of her thing of like, I want to show everyone that I am legit and I can wrestle, and there's no one in women's wrestling and wrestling in general anyway that's better than Mika Satomura. She's like this legendary competitor who's I don't know if you guys have ever watched the documentary Gaia Girls, I think it's called, where it's like a documentary. It's on YouTube. I think it's on YouTube, but there's
that was the promotion. So it GAEA or something like this. This was a promotion. I think they used to show on the Wrestling Channel.
I don't know if it's a promotion. I think it's just the name of the documentary. But
okay, that's all.
So Mika Satomura runs a thing called Sendai Girls. That might be maybe confused with, but she's in that documentary, and she's one of the trainers there, and it's a famous scene where she is getting this trainee to she's constantly trying to get her to hit her and like hit her harder and things like that. And this trainee's just not. She's like she basically runs her into the ropes and drop kicks her full in the face.
Yeah.
Like it's just a real showing of the different methods of training in Japan. They're very, very. It's quite scary, some of the stuff they do over there. But as I say, as far as actual wrestling goes, Mania Satomura is one of the best in the world, regardless of gender.
Yeah.
Just
to come back on that earlier point. So yeah, it was a promotion called Gaea Japan, GAEA, and I don't know that it says that it stands for anything, but they went defunct in 2005. So they ran for 10 years. I remember it back in the day. They showed it on the wrestling channel. It says Gaea's name comes from the Greek mythological goddess of Earth, Gaia or Gaia. So Gaia or Gaia. I'm not sure the pronunciation. Yeah. But
yeah. As far as the match goes, sorry, Dave, you did ask me a moment what I thought of the match.
No, that's fine.
As far as the match goes, as I say, Martinez improved tremendously, and I think a few years ago, you wouldn't have probably had as competitive a match between this point, and it's not a case of looking at it as a legitimate fight or anything like that. But in terms of standings, I think the standing of Meiko probably would have looked at a character like Martina and gone, I can't really have that back and forth with this sort of person. But yeah, as I say, she's improved tremendously. She has worked Japan, as I say, and from knowing what I know about Meiko from people who do know her, I know she is like one of the best in the world, but also one of the nicest in the world as well. So she's obviously there to have a good match too. As well as and just give Martina to make her look good in front of her home crowd, you know.
That's completely what happened as well. Just having a match like this, with someone that's got that style, very technical, hard striking style, submission holds, stuff like this. Even if you're somewhat of a more jokey, light-hearted character, if it's then that right, you can step up and you can go toe to toe with someone, it means from that point onwards, you're elevated that much more.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much everything that's been said so far. I was a little bit confused at first with this match because I found the video package before sort of giving a bit of a backstory to Martina. It almost felt like she was talking about being, I think it was like the first Irish woman in a cage or something like that, where she previously had a big match where she was the eventual loser of the match. But then it went on to say that she missed last year's event because she was like in some sort of training. And I was a bit confused as to whether she was like someone who was well known and was respected enough to be the first woman to be in the cage match, or if she was like this rookie who was still training and still trying to learn her craft and things like that. So I was a bit confused at first in the match. Overall, I thought the match was pretty good. As has been said, I thought that Satomura did a great job of having a good match with her, elevating her status. Martina definitely looked good in the match as well. I really enjoyed the fact that they had a little party afterwards as well. I think
she had a beer with her.
What's that, sorry?
Well, she took a can.
Yeah, definitely. Although she didn't really drink much of it, she just kind of stood there with it in her hand. It wasn't quite a stone cold moment where they were cracking the cans together and spewing it all over the place. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The whole, I think from the start of the match until the end of the segment, I thought was very good. Yeah,
I agree. Shall we? Is there more that we really? Anything? I feel like we've skipped over this one a little bit. Is there anything that stand out move-wise, spot-wise?
I mean, you had I think the finishing sequence towards the end was what sort of stood out. I think when you had Martina trying to battle for that superplex and all that at the end, but it's just a case of Meiko just coming back and just being too much for her in the end. The roundhouse kicks to the head, and then the deathweight driver, which just puts everyone down, and then and sort of like no one sort of like being shocked at the end, but still be appreciative of the effort that had been been given. So it's not a standout match in my opinion. I'll probably give it about 3.25, maybe 3.5, maybe a push. But but as I say, it's just that it was there simply to sort of let Martina sort of show people I can wrestle. She's had a lot of detractors in that sort of respect where they just think she's just a comedy character, and she proves time and time again she's not. She's improved tremendously.
Well, yeah, and again, this goes back to what I was saying. If you've got an opponent who has that more air of legitimacy or that air of respect about them, and then you go toe to toe, if you match up with them, like there was the sense of, okay, like I didn't know who was going to win this. I felt like this could have gone either way because I wasn't familiar. But similar to the last match, there was the sense for me where it felt like perhaps they're going to war. They're trying to pull out everything they've got. Martina, at one point, we may have got a dive to the outside, which again I think they had some ring hands or something absorb the dive for them. But then there was like a brawl into the crowd. I think there was like a vertical suplex or just a snap suplex onto chairs and stuff. So it really was like she's gonna pull out everything she's got to try and, if you say like prove the doubters wrong, then that fits that narrative completely. I give it 3.
Yeah, I'd probably be on a similar wave. I'd probably push it to 3.5. I thought as I say, from the beginning of the match to the end of the little party sequence at the end, I was hooked on it. So I'd go 3.5.
Cool. So next up, I think we
another 6-man tag.
Another 6-man.
British Strong Style.
Yeah. Like, okay, so I can just say I was like, finally, like I feel really familiar with who I'm watching.
The British Strong Style against the Kings of the North.
Yeah.
Loser leaves town for the OTT Tag Team Championships. Like I say, they do allow their tag championships to be defended in 6-mans for reasons unknown. And I suppose they've got an established trios group, then they'll allow it.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because it's something, just to segue off that point for just a second, like, it's rumoured at the moment that AEW may introduce a trios tag team title, and Ring of Honor have a trios belt. Is this something which is it a good idea? I think WCW may have had a 6-man tag belt or something like. No, they had cruiserweight tag team championships at one point.
They did have 6-man tag.
Did they?
Really early on, like really early 90s. I remember them having people like Junkyard Dog and Dustin Rhodes and someone else being
6-man tag. Okay, it was in the back of my memory, but yeah, is it a good idea to have a 6-man tag belt?
I think it can work if you've got established like trios. And I think with Ring of Honor, I think sometimes they have extended that sort of like that sort of groups. I don't really follow it, Ring of Honor, but I know they've got the Mexican luchadors at the moment, the champions, aren't they? I think. But if you've got like established groups like the luchadors, like the Villain Enterprises and things like that, then it can sort of work. But it depends on what sort of level you put them at. How important they're seen. I think New Japan have 6-man tag champions as well, don't they? But they are usually the title that changes hands like near the every other show or something. Or at least they did for a while. It depends on what level of importance they're going to be presented at, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think for me, you need the actual depth of competition as well. You know, to have a trio of tag team titles, I mean, you need teams of 3. You know, even if you have 4 teams of 3, that's 12 wrestlers. You know, in order to actually have a competition in it, you need to have a lot of people actually doing it. Yeah,
and there's more people involved. There's greater risk that if one person gets injured, then that's that trio. You know, there's in a tag team, if there's 2 people, and if one gets injured, then that tag team's kind of screwed for a little while. If you have a trio, and if one person gets injured, it's like, well, the 2 other guys are now left hanging. So it just increases that. Whereas having trios, and if someone gets injured, you then still have 2 of them. And so in that sense, having a faction, or if you've got like a 4-man team, 5-man team, or whatever, but like if you've got the 4 horsemen, and there's Tully and Arn are the tag team champions, if Arn Anderson's suddenly injured, then it can just suddenly be, well, Tully's tagging with Barry Windham until Anderson's back, or something like that, as an example.
Yeah.
And so you can use it so you've also got a person on the outside, and so if you want to wrestle on the outside and not like a manager and something like that. So that there are uses to it, but yeah, trio belts, so I find interesting.
So there was they are traditional tag champions, but they're just being defended in trios matches every now and then. So what did you think of some of the names you got in here? So I'm assuming you guys are not familiar with the Kings of the North, but they are sort of a tandem from Northern Ireland. So and a lot of their sort of giving it based on like the issues between Northern and Republic of Ireland, and that sort of the divide and all that sort of stuff there. So you've got Damien Corvin, who's like the taller guy, quite athletic, but pretty much he's got a really big upside personally, I think.
Yeah.
Got Bonesaw, who I always, every time I hear the name Bonesaw, I just think Bonesaw is really here.
What's that? I don't get the reference. What's that?
Spider-Man, first Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film, Macho Man Randy Savage is in it.
Oh, yes, sorry, yeah.
It's a little Bonesaw. And the third guy who doesn't wrestle anymore, I think this is his last match, they sort of brought him back for this trios match, called Duncan Disorderly, which I always thought was a great name when I first heard that.
It's a great wrestling name, I really enjoy that.
Duncan Disorderly.
It's like, obviously, we do wrestlers in the Extreme show and in the podcast. I think that would be a great one. Sorry, I forgot that. That would be a great name to have as one of our sort of factions, would be like, or one of our
Duncan Disorderly.
Duncan Disorderly. You're like, everyone knows where we're going with this.
Yeah.
So it's a British strong style. Pete Dunne, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate. You guys, they're obviously more prolific now. They're on NXT, and especially Pete Dunne, obviously.
Yeah.
But, again, this was another sort of familiarity sort of situation, because I've seen this trio sort of when they sort of started off. They started off in Progress as this group called British Strong Style, but then they segued into other companies. And so I've seen the British Strong Style trios match quite a lot. I'll be quite interested to see what you guys thought of this, because it's pretty much non-stop action, very few tags, and
lots of stuff going outside, lots of stuff where there's lots of people involved at once. Very, very brawly. You know, it's a little bit of a fireworks display in terms of just a match. That it's like if you turn away for a second, you miss something.
There's a bit where I think you mentioned in the first match, David, when you said about guys getting in position outside for dives and getting ready for dives and ready for spots and things like that. There's a bit at the beginning of this match where Tyler Bate sort of runs off, jumps over the ropes onto the guys on the outside, but then Pete Dunne's immediately in the ring and doing a sequence with Corvin, which I did notice sort of like one of the things where you mentioned about if you're of a certain level of experience, you know to get in there and carry the action on.
Well, Pete Dunne, he's at another level. One, because he's great, and two, obviously, the amount of time and contact he's had in WWE, and the people he then gets to work with and learn from that explains that straight away. The moment I thought you were going to mention was that it had a crazy dive where they go all the way to, like, it's not the entrance aisle. What was it? Like, there's just a bit where
when Corvin dives onto them from the entrance stage,
No, I don't think it's the stage. It's just like where it's like the tunnel or something. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Duncan Sorley does it from the top of the.
Yeah, and like everyone's down below. Like in that part, I thought that was what you're going to refer to about people getting in the way, because he's diving. It's concrete there. He needed, they needed to do everything they could to make it safe. The thing they had to their benefit there is because they're just completely out of bounds in terms of where they're fighting. Like the lighting, it was actually quite as a dive. They could definitely take that clip because he's kind of like a silhouette, like Batman just diving out onto like the thugs of the Joker or something. But I thought this was a great match. This is what I was saying. Like the more I watched of this show, the more I got into it, and I think it's because they built the card up very well in terms of, they had some exciting matches to begin with, some storytelling matches, but then they had some like of the more established stars, the more experienced wrestlers to lead them up as the card went on.
Yeah, I thought it was great to actually see British Strong Style all as a trio, because I think I might be right in saying it's only happened once in NXT UK. Obviously, being more of a WWE watcher, I think they had one rivalry with Imperium, and then Pete Dunne went to the American NXT brand. So to actually see the three of them together, I thought was great as well for someone who's not seen it particularly often.
Yeah, I'm sort of opposite to you on that one, same, because I've seen them a lot doing trios matches, and I do sort of see the same-ish sort of sequences popping up. But in this one, they did sort of pull out a few different things. So, like the sequence like towards the end when they had like the Tyler driver into the bitter end, and then I forget who they did it on, but the guy from the North kicks out a bit. So they're all like, "Well, how do they do that?" Which gives them a nice little sort of bit in there. But it's the result that's interesting, because this is what I was saying earlier about the whole NXT UK contract situation and things like that. You've got these three guys from NXT UK. They're in a loser leaves town match for tag titles, and you just assume, well, that means they must be not coming back then, because they've got to be out there. But no, they do this a bit towards the end when Tyler does the spiral tap, which then follows immediately with a massive dive to the other two on the outside, and then leaves Trent and Pete to sort of finish off in the ring, and they end up winning the tag titles. And into the North, do the whole the thing of loser leaving town. It's interesting. This is a loser leaves town, not leaves OTT. So the prize award was they couldn't wrestle in Dublin. So they could wrestle other things and things like that. But what makes the result even weirder though is that so British Strong Style still have the titles, but nearly every time they've been used to defend them, something's happened to Tyler Bate. Either he's been injured or he's been pulled out for reasons. And it always seems to be in matches against the More Than Hype lads, who are sort of being groomed to be the next guys to take the titles. I think that's what they were going to do. They're going to have a match at this year's ScrapperMania. But with the coronavirus suddenly being the latest thing to get the titles on British Strong Style this time. This is actually this match from ScrapperMania as a trio. I think they've never actually not actually been back since as a trio. Dunne's not been back since. So it's been left to Trent and Tyler and Mustache Mountain. So it just seems that they are never ever going to leave lose those titles due to either injuries, pull-outs, or viruses. So it seems to be the way.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you just bring up, though, Dave. Like, how many people are champions now that weren't supposed to be champions anymore? Because obviously WWE, when we look at that, Braun Strowman is the obvious person that wasn't meant to be in a World Championship match. The World Champion should be Roman Reigns. Universal Champion, I digress. Should be Roman Reigns now. But when you look at some of the other promotions that either have not been able to keep running their shows, or even in the case of AEW, I think Jericho did an interview within the last week, and he said that at the moment we're just keeping the lights on. We're just keeping things ticking over, but nothing's really, they're not doing their storylines as they'd be doing. You know, they're not able to progress. They're just keeping things ticking along. So
still doing a pay-per-view though for some reason.
I know. I don't get that. I don't know what their plans are for it. I don't know. Anyway, but that's the same as WWE. We can briefly mention that they're going to do a show at Titan Tower, climbing up the building like Die Hard, which is going to be cool. But there's going to be people, especially in these smaller promotions, that are just champion, and they're like, I was meant to lose it, and I'm still the champion. So some of these reigns, like, also, just usually, traditionally in wrestling, it's in effect that if you don't defend your championship within 30 days, that you're stripped of a title. In New Japan, Jon Moxley was the United States champion, and he wasn't able to make a show because of injury, and they stripped him of the title based on the idea if anyone misses a show, they're stripped of the title. So I think everyone is just kind of putting things on pause, but there's going to be lots of people that have got the belt or should have had the belt, and things aren't going the way they are because of this current situation.
Yeah, it's a weird little situation that's obviously happening, and unfortunately I think in independent wrestling it's sort of hitting quite hard with a lot of these guys as well. I'll talk about like the repercussions that OTT have had with having to cancelled their big event this year, obviously. But
Yeah.
I said it's all in state of flux, so we really don't know what's going to happen. But some companies are still advertising some things happening in a few months' time, and it's like, well, we don't know if you're going to be able to do them yet, so let's just calm down the advertising, just save up your stuff, let everyone get healthy. It's a weird little thing. It's almost like an off season for like wrestlers, and they can all get better and get healthy, and hopefully they can just come back stronger.
Yeah. This might actually lead to an off season in wrestling. Who knows?
One can hope. So I'm
Back to the match.
just going to quickly just go back out and come back in a moment, but I'm going to give this one. I'm going to give it 3.75 just because of familiarity and things like that. I've seen the British Strong Style 6-man quite a few times, and surprise result notwithstanding, it was still a good match, but I have seen this sort of thing before.
Yeah, for what it was, and especially within the context of the card and everything else, I give this a 4-star.
Yeah, I'd probably say about the same. I'd go 4 stars for this one. I thought it was a really good match.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a match, and this is a perfect example. It was a match without any hokiness in it. You don't need to have hokiness. You just see that these guys are trying to compete with each other. They're trying to defeat each other, and I thought it worked really well. In terms of it being like a big schmoz where everyone's stuff's going on all the time rather. I still felt like I could follow it. I was getting into it. I was getting into like the twists and turns of the reversals and the comebacks, just like ridiculously hard-hitting moves and some chain sequences. There was just like sequences towards the end where people were hitting huge move after huge move. But yeah, I thought it was a great match. Just trying to see what's on my notes.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, okay, so let's just intro what the next match was. What was the next match, Sam?
The women's title match, Raven Creed versus Debbie Keitel with Valkyrie in her corner.
Yes, okay. Do you want to lead the way on some thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. Well, until I read it on the match card that I've got in front of me, I completely forgot about it. It was one of those ones where it was a very short match. Nothing really happened. There was a couple of bits where the Valkyrie on the outside got in the way and got hit.
Yeah.
But it sort of, for me, it felt like it was building to a longer match. Obviously, the rest of the matches were longer than this one as well. Some of them more than double the length of this match.
Yeah.
And it kind of ended quite abruptly. It was a strange one. As I say, I forgot about it until I just read it on the card while we were doing this. So yeah, it wasn't a big one in my memory.
No, fair enough. I'm much the same. It's a match where I didn't have I wasn't familiar with either of them before the show. I enjoyed it. Obviously, a title match adds more weight to it going in. But yeah, it was short. It was functional. The unfortunate thing with its positioning on the card is after like a big match, then as you're leading into more like other featured matches, it's somewhat of in the palate cleanser position on the card where they're giving everyone a chance to settle down after something by having a shorter match, having a match where they kind of sacrifice the match because they need a palate cleanser in between, and then they build the show back up into the two main events after. Well, I say two main events, but obviously Liger is a huge get for them, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Dave, you're back.
I'm back.
Which is on the women's championship match.
Women's title matches. It's unfortunate with the women's title sort of situation over there because they obviously it started off with Montina being the champion, obviously being the sort of main sort of attraction of that division, and then they've slowly sort of built up a bigger division, and these girls are sort of products of those contender shows that I was talking about earlier. And Valkyrie and Debbie Keitel are this tandem called the Woke Queens, which is quite an interesting little act. And this is sort of earlier in their sort of run, so they haven't been as established. Probably would explain why the crowd maybe not are a little bit quiet on Debbie's entrance, particularly.
Yeah. Okay.
But they've all got. But I think on the plus side, I think all of them like really, particularly the two in the match, have very striking sort of looks, very disparate characters and things like that. So they've got their characteristics sort of quite well down defined, and especially Raven Creed with their sort of like crazy look and everything like that, her unhinged sort of characters, which is, and the popularity she got was as a result of just her getting popular. She wasn't meant to be like on the face side of things at all, but she just got steadily more popular as it went on. Yeah, but as I agree to what you said, as a match, unfortunately, they didn't give it the time that probably they could have made something with, and say abrupt ending sort of by the end of it. I did like the bit where one of them tells the other to save themselves and runs away as Raven's coming towards them. So like, save yourself, all that sort of stuff. But and catching her on the sort of like comic sort of catching of them.
Yeah, on the outside, where she fell out and she lands into her arms.
Short and snappy. Didn't get the time probably deserved.
But again, this is the interesting thing for myself and Sam in particular, because obviously if you've got familiarity with these guys, but if we're going into this without the build up, if we watch something and we feel like it's a palate cleanser, or it's like someone's got a quiet reaction when they come in, we don't know the backstory of how much time this was given. Like, do they have a weekly TV show? How does it work? How do people?
No, they have like monthly shows, the contender shows and things like that. They're only like a place to like pack a certain amount of people live, and then they'll put the shows on demand service and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But, a lot of people that were out there would have been exactly like yourselves, maybe not as familiar with these two as other people are. So again, like I say, it's probably positioned in that.
Yeah.
Place
so what I mean, sorry, Dave. What I mean is that I don't necessarily mean television, but do they put out content weekly if they do like a taping once a month? Is there stuff to follow, or because
they'll have like regular shows? Well, before the pandemic started, they had regular shows in the Ringside Club, which is like next door to the National Stadium in Dublin, and that was their contender shows. And they have they used to run a place called the Tivoli Theatre. And that unfortunately got taken over to be knocked down, basically. So they had like regular monthly shows there up until about 2018. And they've sort of been searching since for like a regular venue in Dublin. But they'd also do shows. They've done shows in like Belfast. They do regular ones in Belfast. They've started doing shows in Cork, which was for them quite a big deal because no one really ran Cork at the time. So they would have regular shows that would build along with stories, things like that, and then they would go up on their on-demand service. And so if you're a regular on the on-demand, you know who these characters are. But like you say, if you're in the crowd 2000, the majority of them, unless they're really watching OTT on on-demand like regularly, we're not going to be as familiar with these two as they are. I think today they're a lot more familiar. They're a lot more familiar because they've been out and done this sort of like the characters and done the gimmicks and things like that elsewhere as well, so they've built up more of a reputation. So have had this match like a year later, and you probably get a little bit more time for them, and they have probably a bigger reaction.
Yeah, and again, that's an interesting thing. You can always look back at older shows and you can think, wow, look at the star power they had then, but they weren't necessarily stars back then. I saw a thing on Twitter where someone shared a photo of the WWE roster from about 2005, 2007 or something like this, and it was Edge and Batista and Rey Mysterio and Undertaker, and it was just John Cena, and it was like everyone there as a main eventer. It may have just about had like Alberto Del Rio, who seemed about the weakest in the lineup, but still a multi-time world champion. But when you go back then, Edge may have not even been world champion by that point. You know what I mean? So, like, when you look back on things, people could watch back to this and think, oh, they didn't get much of a reaction, but they're big stars. But that's, this is how people build themselves up. Star rating, guys?
I'm going to give them a generous 2 as well. I think that sounds really meant to be. I think I have to give them a 2.
I'll give them 2.5.
Because of the abruptness of it and shortness of the match. I think they did well, but I get the impression they probably weren't happy with the amount of time they got given. And maybe it couldn't work a more natural finish without it feeling abrupt.
Yeah, fantastic. Sam?
Yeah, I think just down to the fact that it was quite an abrupt ending, and as I said, I didn't really remember it too much. I'd go probably 1.5.
Okay, fair play. I'll give it 2, but I don't massively remember it myself either, and that's the truth. But I remember enjoying it enough, but like my mind, wasn't taking it in. Okay, so next up, I believe it's the match I've got behind me.
Yes.
It is. So we have Jushin, Thunder Liger, Scottie Davis. So any context that you can give on how did they end up with Jushin there? Because that is a huge get for any promotion.
Yeah, well, they did have another match in store originally. So previous sort of show they'd done at one of the stadium shows, one of the big shows, they had a tag team match. I forget who the opponents were, but one of the teams was Scottie Davis and Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
Will Ospreay, New Japan star, and everything like that from here in Essex and everything. One of the best in the world at the moment. But he's had a hand in sort of like training. Scottie sort of trained over in Ireland, obviously, but he's also trained with Will in his own company called used to have a company called Frontline over here, who sort of takes and he have like a New Japan sort of style thing of having like young lions doing like crew and ring and things like that. They do training seminars and things like that with them and things like that. He was part of that, so he's very high on Scottie and wanted to like bring him up. So the original plan was after that tag match had finished, which they won, and Will was going to face Scottie at the show. It was going to be Will Ospreay against Scottie Davis. But New Japan contracts and things like that, and dates that they book for, I think they have a contract situation with New Japan that affects like people like Will Ospreay and Zack Sabre Jr., etc., where if New Japan book them for a date, that's their date, regardless if they've already got something else, that they are the priority. They will let them wrestle on other places, but they have to have them there. So as a way of apology, they gave him Liger. So that's literally it. There's no like feud or anything like that. It's literally a case of he was going to wrestle Will negotiate with New Japan to get Liger, and it was only about maybe 2 weeks maybe before this that Liger announced he was retiring that year. So this was like the last time that I'm going to see Liger live. So really important match for Scottie, and again Scottie is only at this point I think 19.
Wow. That's impressive.
They definitely mentioned something about that on commentary about him being as young as he was. It was the fact that it was the seasoned veteran going up against the newcomer.
Yeah.
That was definitely an interesting angle to go with this match.
But okay, so let's just talk a moment. Okay, so Sam, are you particularly familiar with Jushin Thunder Liger?
He's a name that I've heard. This is the first time I've actually seen him in action, though.
Oh, he's an incredible wrestler. Like for as long as I've been watching wrestling, so he retired literally this year at the Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah. I'm trying to think. It wasn't actually the greatest showing. I think he was involved in a couple of 6-man tag matches or something. Do you remember, Dave, this year?
Yeah, he was an 8-man tag on the first night with a bunch of guys that he would wrestle with from that sort of era over the years, and then he was tagged the next night, him and one of his old rivals, I forget who it was, against Dragon Lee and Jerome, who like the current generation. So he wanted to like basically put over Takahashi before.
But you know what? If I remember correct, especially the 8-man tag, I feel like it was an incredibly short match where people may have tagged him once, and it was almost like he was bringing out some of his friends who he wanted to have his last match with, and not everyone was still in ring condition, basically. Which was a little bit of a shame. They announced that he would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, which is and of course it didn't happen because that was one of the only things WWE have postponed, and it's one of the only things where they don't need to be in the ring and they can social. Although Liger would have had to have done it over the internet, he's not going to fly from Japan for it. But Liger.
They need an audience, that sort of show, though, don't they? So they can get everyone together. And I guess so.
It's a Hall of Fame. It's a celebration. If you're just making a speech to a camera, it's going to be a bit sad. But as long as I've been watching wrestling, Jushin Thunder Liger, I remember I think he might have been WCW light heavyweight champion, or was wrestling against Brian Pillman, Flying Brian Pillman, father of Brian Pillman Jr. For the WCW light heavyweight championship from about 1991, and by that point he was already a name.
That's right, yeah. And he's I remember watching him. I think the first time I saw him was when the old Eurosport channel used to have like a New Japan highlights program, and things like that. And there was this crazy like 8-man tag, junior tag, something like that, where like was team captain of, and all these other names. That some of them were masked, some of them weren't, but I forget who was in there. But it was like I just remember this sequence where like there was like everyone did a dive at some point. This is like 91, 92. And it's like this sort of thing you expect to see nowadays, and it's like quite part of the furniture nowadays. They just did this bit where just each member of the team just kept doing the dives onto more and more people on the outside, sort of resulting in Liger. I think Liger's actually based on like an anime character.
He is.
He is an anime character.
He is.
That's what the costume is entirely based on.
Yeah. And I think it was even a thing where when he's retired, the company that originated it said, you can continue to use it because he is Jushin Thunder Liger. But Sam, if you've not seen it, and his music, his entrance music in Japan is just the most incredible theme music ever. It's basically like a cheesy. It might be if it's from a cartoon or anime, it might be the theme tune. But it's like da 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 Jushin Liger.
Well, it is the music they use. For some reason, it's been overdubbed. I don't know if there was like a technical issue with it in the show or something. It's overdubbed on the actual VOD, but it is that song. It just sounds a bit weird hearing it on an MP3, as it were, without like a big crowd behind it. But I'm lucky that I have seen Jushin Liger a few times live over here. A couple of times for Rev Pro have a working relationship with New Japan, and they brought Liger over a couple of times. And I have live seen Jushin Liger versus AJ Styles.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
Really good match. It's a bit stupid thing to say because I always go, oh wow, Liger looks exactly the same as he always has. Obviously he does because he's probably had suit with a mask. We don't see any of his flesh. But yeah, he's a guy that has. This is another little pop fact for you, Sam. Jushin Liger is the man who invented the shooting star press.
Okay.
Yeah. He originated it. He's the first person ever to do it.
That is cool.
And he only did it like for a short time. Everyone else all seemed to like just take it and perfect it a little bit more than him. But he's the first person ever to do it. If you get onto New Japan World sometimes, just look up some old Jushin Liger junior heavyweight matches against people like Ultimo Dragon and people like that. It's just stunning and such an influence.
Now I'm trying to remember, is there a Jushin Liger versus Dynamite Kid match out there?
I don't think there is. The Dynamite Kid sort of like series of matches in Japan were against Tiger Mask.
Oh, Tiger Mask. Sorry, that's what I was thinking. Okay, I'll give a quick mention to that, but there is.
There might be.
Yeah, there might be. But I was remembering because Dynamite Kid died about a year ago or something, and I was watching some of his old matches, and you would think they were from today. The athleticism, the high flying in them, they were so far ahead of their time. But wrong person I was thinking of. But Jushin Liger.
I don't know what his real name was, but he might have had a few matches with Dynamite under his own name before he became Liger.
Tom Billington.
So he was No. Jushin Liger.
Jushin.
Before Liger became Liger, he was obviously under his real name over here, and I know he did a spell over here for like World of Sport for like a long while, so he may have wrestled Dynamite.
Okay, so we will get back to the show, but I'll just quickly ask you, Dave, what was Liger and Styles like?
So when did it happen? It happened in 2014 or 15, I think. I want to say. And it was the main event of a match of series of like British guys versus New Japan talents. By Sam. So I'd already at that point I'd seen what other matches I had that match. There was Shinsuke Nakamura against Marty Scurll that night. There was another match, Okada versus Ospreay, first time they'd ever wrestled against each other, and that's the night that Ospreay got invited to join New Japan.
Cool.
In backstage after, but so it was a main event. Yeah, there's only so much that AJ and Jushin could do. Because obviously Liger is still great, but obviously still in his 40s at the time, late 40s. Still at that point, I think maybe like 45, 46 or something. It was a very good match. It was the main event that night. It was the title match, but yeah, it's well worth having a look. I mean, I
No,
know
I will. I remember one time in TNA, I think it may have been either the only time or one of only 2 times they had Liger in TNA. And I think he took on Samoa Joe, but Samoa Joe may have got a broken hand or something, and they had like a 5-minute match, or maybe Liger was the one that was injured. And it was just like
someone was injured,
the biggest like shame in terms of that was such an opportunity. And I think Samoa Joe won with, like literally in 5 minutes. But it's amazing the length of time Liger's career's gone, and there have been some of these dream matches. Like I may have had some awareness of AJ and Liger, but yeah, I've never seen it, so that is one to look out.
Yeah, they never had one on TV, so this one obviously being a live event, it didn't have TV restrictions, just had obviously time still left in the show restrictions, that sort of thing. But if you do want to watch it, I know the Rev Pro doing their demand service, they are doing a 2-week free trial, so if anyone wants to seek that out, I can't remember what the event's called, but I think it's from either 2014 or 15, and happening in Reading of all places.
Okay, let's talk about this actual match.
Yeah,
I thought it was a really good match. Really good match.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
you all right, Dave?
I massively agree with that.
Yeah, I've got thunder, so
I heard like a rumble. Yeah.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Jushin, Thunder, Liger, and then we get a storm outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd agree with you, David. I thought it was a very good match. There was some really big spots as well. There was like a brain buster to the concrete outside that Scottie Davis took. As with the women's match earlier with Martina and Miko Satomura.
Yeah.
Jushin Thunder Liger made Scottie Davis look very good, as well as obviously putting him over in the end. So it was a really, really good match. And obviously there are that old wrestling saying where you go out on your back, don't you? So in general, I just thought it was a very, very good match. Everything kind of happened the way you would want it to in a way as well. So yeah, really good.
Yeah, I'd never seen Scottie Davis before, but I thought he really held his half of this match. I thought he was great. He sells really well. I was very impressed. He'd take bumps from Liger where there were like sequences. They were either I might be muddling up, but it was like German suplexes and things, and like you say a brain buster. We had okay. So what is the name of the move? I'm forgetting the name. Is it surfboard? Where something Liger always does. Surfboard, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's just like stretched like unbelievably. Just very good stuff in there. Really impressive match. And I say that with the nostalgia of watching Jushin Liger, and just because when I say I've been watching Liger for years, I don't see that many Liger matches because obviously he's not. You don't see him every week like you would if you're watching AJ Styles, for example, because he's on American promotions. But it's always exciting to see a Liger match, and I thought this was a great showcase.
Remember a few years ago he randomly showed up on an NXT TakeOver show wrestling Tyler Breeze.
And I think that was his only WWE appearance ever.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Right.
I was really impressed again to watch this. As I say, I'd sort of forgotten a little bit about it the first watching, so just a nice little bits. I just really like at the beginning the sort of like the psychology of the initial contact and Scottie getting the upper hand on the first sort of exchange. And like it's all going, okay, great, aboard and all that sort of stuff. And the next exchange, he just easily takes him down and puts him into like the not the surfboard, but the other
one where he stretches him. Yeah.
Back and then stretches him back, pulls him back. And it's just like I may be older, but I can still do this to you, young man. So don't get cocky, that sort of thing.
And
so I really like the psychology of that.
But see, this is where Liger is a perfect example of someone who is been able to have such a long career because he wrestles smart. One, like you say, he looks exactly the same. The only time we ever see his face, Dave, are you familiar with his Kishin Liger character? Yeah. So Sam, occasionally he will have just like Finn Balor might have the demon side of his personality. I think it's perhaps in history 4 or 5 times Liger has ever done this. But is it 4? He will have this evil version of himself where he will literally just destroy his costume. He'll have face paint underneath, And then I think he was trying to kill someone with a screwdriver once, years and years ago.
Yeah, so it's like four times. The first time was in a match against the Great Muta, who is like the evil version of Keiji Muto.
Yeah.
Who's like an extraordinary wrestler anyway in his own right. But didn't know the disqualification match they were having there, and Muta just kept ripping apart his mask and things like that until he basically pulled it apart. And he's like, shit. And then Liger spews missed at Muta, which was Muta's thing. And he's like, and then does the same thing with the spike, which tries to get him in the corner with that. And then I think there's another match for another company. It just came out as Jushin Liger for another match for another company. And then I think there's a tag match. Is the next time where him and one of the Tiger Masks win the junior tag titles. And there's been a story. I think one of the guys in the other team that have been basically pushing him, pushing him to that point. And then it was most recently his feud with Minoru Suzuki last year. At the end towards the end of a match, Suzuki had been pushing him so much to the point where he just basically took his whole thing off and was Jushin Liger again, and they had a brawl back to the backstage, which is a lovely little moment for Liger fans, because it was his last year and he was going back and doing sort of the other versions of Liger. So he did the Jushin Liger, then he wrestled Suzuki at Battle Liger with a different mask. All these versions of Liger, it was quite incredible. But this match was Liger is going to put over your young phenom wrestler in Scottie Davis. I've seen Scottie a few times, and every time I've seen him, he's just been extraordinary. For someone so young, he is so good. Sky's the limit for that guy. I would say the only thing I sort of remembered from the match, which was why I probably forgot how good it was sort of went towards the end, stumbled towards the end, where he tries to go over the top of him, over the shoulder to do his finishing move, and Liger doesn't quite have the balance, and they tumble towards the end, and they go straight, but then they finish it off towards the end. But in many ways, that kind of still worked, because it was Scottie sort of still taking advantage of the situation and getting the win, which the crowd was shocked at. I think there was actually some people, the majority of the crowd probably just thought, Liger will be another thing like the Martina thing earlier, where it'll be a good effort, a good defeat, but Scottie sort of wins really convincingly, and it has a shock reverberation through the crowd of oh shit, he won.
And what's so good, especially again with the context, you saying this was no story going to it, it was just 2 weeks. If Liger had then come in and won, he still gets the rub and he still gets the footage, everything. He's in the ring with Liger, but this is how you can turn. This is smart booking of how you can turn something like this into a real positive. Because Liger will go back to Japan, and it wouldn't have hurt him at all. It's not going to be a blemish on his career. But for Davis, it's he had this incredible match with a living legend, Jushin Thunder Liger, and afterwards there was all of the pose to the crowd. It wasn't just I won and Liger's down. Liger paid respect to him, was pointing at him. I can't remember if they shook hands, but you know what I mean. And so it was all this. So exactly. So it was really making this guy mean something.
Yeah, 100%. I think I may have confused you earlier. It wasn't like this match was done in 2 weeks' notice. It was 2 weeks beforehand that Liger announced he was retiring. So the match had been set in place for a couple of months, but at least from a couple of shows ago. But like I say, it's still nonetheless it's a legend going out on his back, like Sam says, and but making sure that the guy is respectful. But at the same time, Scottie's been just as respectful back and just sort of giving Liger all the plaudits, which I've seen Liger do. As I say, I've seen him a few times, and he's always been that sort of guy where he'll always be happy seemingly with whoever he's wrestled and with the crowd reaction he still gets.
Great. Shall we give it a star rating?
I'll go with at least a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I will give a 4. A strong 4. Could give it more, but I'll leave that at 4. And we move on to, I believe, the main event.
Yes.
So we have the Ring General. We have Volta. What was that, Dave?
Volta. No, sorry.
Volta. Jordan Devling. Sam.
Yeah.
Give us some thoughts.
I thoroughly enjoyed the match. As I said to you before we came on, I thought it was very strange to see Jordan Devlin in a face role, because I've only ever seen him on WWE TV, where he is obviously a big heel. But he was obviously the crowd favourite, the Irish ace in Ireland, so that was great. The build-up to it, I know that they've had matches before where Walter has come out on top. And then there was the whole bit before the match had even started where Walter was showing the ultimate disrespect and like stamping on his title and stuff like that, just because he didn't care about the promotion at all.
Yeah.
You know, so in terms of like the storyline of it, you know, I've got it instantly, as well as you know, the match being hard hitting and there were, you know, big spots. I'm also a big fan of the pile driver. I know that they don't really do it in WWE at all, and that's a rule that they don't do it. I quite like seeing it on the independent promotions. And the fact that Jordan Devlin managed to get Walter into that kind of package position, then drop him down, was very impressive as well.
And they teased it earlier.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, the fact that there was a point where Walter was going to take his title and just leave. He didn't
love
care.
that.
He went, and then loads of people kept coming out and going, no, no, no. And then the whole roster came out and they all stopped him. And then obviously he got back in the ring. Devlin eventually won. Walter then sort of had a little handshake as well, which was a nice little sign of respect. But then it was one of these things. Walter is like a very, very good heel. No one ever thinks of him as like you know, a character that you love. He is a wrestler that you love because of his ability.
Yeah.
But the character everyone hates, which it was nice that he had that little moment of respect. And then he went and it didn't drag on too much. It was all about Devlin at that point, and the fact that he won, he'd overcome the monster. There's sort of that little David and Goliath sort of thing as well, where Walter is such a big guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really, really, it was the perfect way to end the show for me.
I thought, yeah, I would say this was a outstanding match. I enjoyed it. Long match, but again, it was another match which it didn't feel long because it was engaging. Walter is brilliant. I rank him so highly. He is so good. I haven't seen everything of NXT UK, but I always try to seek out stuff with Walter, especially like big matches. I love his presence. I love his entrance. I love like the style he wrestles. He's a big guy. He's not the biggest guy. He's not. He's got a unique build and physique where he's not the most ripped, but he just looks so mean, so nasty, so tough and strong. And
the chops.
I know.
The chops.
And the thing that goes with that is that he seems not only like he's a brute, but he seems like he's intelligent as well.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's this nasty streak. I mean, it plays into, especially wrestling in NXT UK and wrestling in the UK, just because he comes across like this Germanic brute bullying us, and it plays completely to the British, what we would see as like the perfect heel character.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
It goes to the sort of like the history of the match. Obviously, they had the match the year before where Walter won. Devlin, as I say, in OTT, he's known as the import killer. So he was having these matches against the visitors coming over and was on a hot streak, was beating everybody, eventually winning the title and then defending it, and then this, as you say, the big bad Austrian who seems unstoppable stops him and becomes champion, and then as I said earlier, they built up this rematch with the use of David Starr and everything, and sort of increased the stuff. So it's interesting, the guys that stopped them at the end. You had the first guy who came out was the guy I mentioned earlier, Joe Bray, who's the booker of OTT and a former wrestler himself, who was in there. So he was the first out. And then you had Morton Height coming out in the second one. So you had like the past of OTT, the future of OTT, another past of OTT, and a guy called Paul Tracy. Coming out, who's the last guy to interrupt. Interesting factoid: he was former partner and trainer who ran a training facility in Ireland, alongside a certain person called Fergal Devitt, who's now known as Finn Balor.
Yeah.
So he's got the links with Finn Balor completely in there. I mean, and obviously they both trained Jordan as well, so you obviously got the very, very big similarities between Jordan and Finn. But like I say, it's just a great good match. You've got all this stuff with they leading into sort of like the. What did you guys think of like the promo before the match, the little film?
I'm trying to remember it now, Dave, just because this was a week since I watched it.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like had the build up and sort of like echoing this sort of idea that Jordan was the Buster Douglas in this situation with Volta as Mike Tyson. And sort of like with Giant Jordan parallels to that, so that he was going to come in and be the upset and become the new big thing and all that sort of stuff to beat the unbeatable monster.
Did Buster Douglas become the new big thing?
Up the mountain and then Volta's in the sea. There's a giant thing in the sea. It's a guy who does these OC promo videos. They're all good. But back to the match. Like I say, there's not much more I can say to it. You guys pretty much covered it all. They had really good chemistry. The story was really well built on the whole sort of thing of him having Jordan having this knockout combo that he was going to try and get in, but his hand's injured throughout the whole match.
Yeah.
Towards the end, it's Volta's hand that he tries to chop him, and he can't do it because he's been hurt as well. And then he does the combo, does the pile driver, and the place goes mental. The result.
But see, also just on like you said, like we both of you mentioned about like Volta going to walk out, and you say about like people from the past, people from the future. That's something that's so smart, which is in terms of, and you don't see it in WWE. Like so rare do you see this sense of like the company rallying around. So like you used to get it where faces would come out to save other faces and stuff like this. But it's like it like goes beyond like feuds that everyone's going to come out. Everyone has got the same mission. It makes the audience all feel like everyone's in this together. Walter's doing all of the heel things. There was a point where he's got like the flag, and he's just flinging it across. And like I say, walking out, and he's attacking the hand, which in terms of like normally someone might like attack an arm, like what Pete Dunne obviously does stuff with the fingers and everything, but just like attacking someone's hand, like just like taking them out like that, it's not just like you're working on an arm, you're working on a leg. It was just like he was playing everything in perfect heel mode. And so then at the end, when he's overcome it, and there's just like everyone's out, everyone's on stage, like the show actually goes on at least 5 minutes after he's got the victory, and it's just being able to capture that feeling in the arena, the emotion, the audience. It's for them, this is their ScrapperMania, but it's a WrestleMania moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. And there's a nice little wrinkle as well that view that continues the Volta David Starr story as well as the David Starr's now involved as well, because he does like thing. Remember when WrestleMania 10 when Bret Hart's won the title and Owen's in the Hart's in the aisleway going, "What about me? I beat you." That sort of thing. There's a similar sort of thing with that. And it's obviously they do the handshake, but it's not before Volta looks at David Starr. And I don't think at that point he sort of like knows exactly what he's going to do to Jordan, and if he's going to show respect or not. But it's when he looks at Starr and goes, "Well, Jordan just did the thing that Starr can't do, and that's beat me." So he does it very purposely right in front of Starr, just to really antagonise him, sort of like add another wrinkle to their feud. It's a nice little bit as well, and then it sort of continues from this point and carries on to today, where Starr is actually the champion now, and him and watch on YouTube, and if you get a chance to watch that, it's a phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, Dave, you've just kind of a little bit frozen for me there. You are back.
That's right. I wasn't saying anything else.
You're saying it's phenomenal. Okay. Shall we give this a star rating?
I'll go 4.5.
I agree.
It was a very, very good match.
Yeah, and see, and here's the thing, just on terms of star ratings. Like, can everything be a 5-star match? Everything can't be a 5-star match, but I think a lot of things can be a 4 or 4.5. You can have like the standard of athleticism, and even just stuff like this. I was impressed with the quality of the show in most ways compared to a little bit like perhaps I was expecting of an indie show. It had a very professional look, but in terms of just what you can do with camera work and storytelling from a production standpoint, and just that you get better quality audio nowadays on indie shows than what you would back in the day. These indie style matches where you'll see lots of moves and innovation that you don't always see, and it's like a drawn out long storytelling war again. This was like an excellent example of a very high level match, which I'd say is 4.5. I wouldn't say it's a 5-star just because I think I would very, very rarely give out a 5-star. But for me, this qualifies for something that I wouldn't call a 5-star match, but it's up there with the best that a non-5-star match can be.
That's fair enough. I, on the other hand, am going to give it a 4.75 because I do, knowing the story going into it,
yeah,
and having seen the feud and everything like that, I had the history sort of element of it, so I had that side of it as well as everything else. But I'm glad to see it's obviously the match translates to people who don't know the history anyway and things like that, and it's still like revered as a quality piece of work that it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, incredible performance by both of them, and it obviously it will help me and it will help Sam that we're familiar with these guys because obviously now they're in the WWE fold, but there's a reason why they're there, and it's because, well, one, because WWE was poaching everyone, but also because they the talent backs it up. This is why these guys are in the main event.
Yeah. Just so you know, I've just checked on their YouTube that the David Starr John Deadly match, which is sort of carries on from this point, is on YouTube. So everyone go out there and watch that one as well. There's lots of stuff I could really easily recommend. To subscribe to the OTTs at YouTube, they've got that match. They've got things like Mighty Skull versus Matt Riddle on there. Yeah. They've got so many big matches on there, seriously, and they've got probably the most intriguing match of all, which is okay, so I'm going to say what the match is, and you'll just sort of have to work out the ring fall behind it. It is the team of British Strong Style, Pete Dunne, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate versus the Angel Cruisers, Angel Cruz and Be Cool, and their partner, Tyler Bate.
Okay.
Exactly. Your face says it all then, Sam. Watch that match. Okay. I guarantee you will love it. The 5-man 6-man.
So many questions, but I don't know what to do.
Don't ask them. Just watch it. Just watch the match.
Fair play.
Okay.
So I mean, as you said, the show I think is of a good quality. It's maybe not the best OTT show of all time, but it's certainly a very strong show in terms of like the general quality of matches and production. Apart from anything else, as you mentioned, David, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see you guys seem to have enjoyed it as much as I would hope you had.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to what I said, like some of like it was a show for me which got better the longer it went on, and that may have been that I acclimated to it a bit more as I was like getting into it. I was more familiar with some of the people as it goes on throughout the card, and like the hokey stuff that you had at the beginning. I personally, I can appreciate it, but I could also do without it. I wouldn't necessarily miss it. And I do think like the matches you get towards the end, they kind of do show you why you don't need to have hokey stuff happen in the actual ring. You can have funny stuff happen. You can do a comedy spot which isn't clearly cooperation or silly long drawn out setup bits like the headbutt slide. What was it, slip and slide or whatever you had earlier? But yeah, no, it was a great show, and it's certainly, I'd definitely watch more OTT.
Yeah, I'm on exactly the same page there. I'd love to see more OTT. And just in general, obviously, as I say, I've only really watched WWE I've been watching AEW sort of weekly since that came out as well, the Dynamite shows. But I would happily watch a lot more independent wrestling if it's of that same standard. That was a great show for me.
And yeah, and one thing I think is worth mentioning on this, obviously, I'll briefly mention about what's happening with NXT UK in a moment, but just as NXT is the proving ground where people then move up to the main roster in WWE, in terms of NXT and especially NXT UK, this is NXT to NXT UK, if you know what I mean. If NXT was the WWE, this is an example of there's so many people here that have ended up NXT UK sort of thing, that it's with the production values of it, it's and obviously the star power that they've got in terms of quality wrestlers, and that they have brought in people that have more star power. I'd say this is a promotion where you'll see people that will end up in WWE, or if people end up in AEW or other places. Some of these guys, obviously, like you mentioned about Will Ospreay, wrestles New Japan. Anyone else that wrestles abroad? It doesn't matter. But
yeah, I mean, over the years they've had like all the names.
Yeah, like Marty Skull, you mentioned.
Marty Skull, Saxon Jr., all that sort of people.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so just very quickly before we wrap this up, have you guys heard about NXT UK rumours that there's the potential it may not continue? And because obviously with the current situation happening in the world, and something we can briefly touch on, is there's rumours going about that the WWE itself may be being sold. Have you not heard that?
No.
I've not read those, no.
So there's been a couple of things. One was a bit more outlandish, saying about Disney, probably because they buy everything, and I don't think Disney is a fit or would have the interest. But they're saying about ESPN or something is rumoured, just as WrestleMania this year, you could watch it on. They were pushing it for you to watch it on traditional pay-per-view, and they were pushing it over the network. There was going to be a deal which fell through because of the whole COVID situation, where it may have been that on ESPN Plus or something like that would have been another way of watching WrestleMania. And there's just current rumours going about that WWE may be in business for a sale. Separate to that, over the last week I've been hearing that what is the status of NXT UK? They're not continuing to produce shows like they're continuing with Raw, SmackDown and NXT, and there are questions over will it continue? Will it survive? Will they fold it? Obviously, we've seen with the XFL that it got folded rather than just put on hiatus. Could NXT UK be put in a similar position where if they've got people that, because we haven't heard about NXT UK wrestlers being released that I can think of. So is it a case that this one they're just going to keep it on pause? They might have different contract structures where they're able to, or could it fold?
I've heard through the grapevine that they're how do they say it in their contract? So they're sort of like their low ball guarantee or what have you is just basically on that such a lower scale than some of their other people, their main roster guys, that they're just going to keep on those retainers for a while until they decide what they're going to do with it. I mean, I can't say I know anyone who watches NXT UK on the reg.
Yeah.
It's one of those sort of shows that's sort of just there, and sort of you can watch it and catch up and things like that. But it's like, I would take an OTT show with that sort of crowd over an NXT UK show with just has such little soul a lot of the time. I feel it's so overproduced and in some cases, and just has a lack of anything that makes me want to watch it. You know what I mean? And that's no disrespect to the guys that are in there doing it. There's been some really good matchups they've had on there, but it never seems to have any buzz.
Yeah, it's a show which to me it has its own identity, but it hasn't found its own identity for what I think it could become yet.
Yeah, I think for me it's one of these ones where NXT is sort of, before NXT was the developmental ground to go onto the main roster. It's felt more recently like NXT UK was the developmental to go on to NXT. So bigger names, people like Rhea Ripley, Imperium, obviously, Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner started off in NXT, then went over to NXT UK, and now they're back over there at the moment, going for the Undisputed Era. Pete Dunne as well was obviously UK champion for a long time. Once they get a bit too big for NXT UK, they seem to then go to NXT, and it sort of has become the younger sibling that is obviously not of the same quality. Yeah,
well, but it is, and even when like the show, it doesn't look as well produced. It's a lower budget show.
Yeah, definitely. They even had it. I can't remember which festival it was. It might have been the Download Festival, where they had about 4 different episodes of them basically just performing in a tent.
Yeah, where you could just see the light pouring in.
Yeah.
What was it? The Download, wasn't it?
Oh, wherever it
was. The Download Festival.
Yeah. Wherever it was jarring to watch that.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. It's a bit. It's just a shame. This is what I was saying about the contract situations. These guys are obviously on a retainer. They can work some places. They can't work certain places, and everyone who's on one of those contracts. It's the most annoying thing. Is that they've lost a bit. Everyone's on those contracts and then tweets out how great some of the stuff that's on the network and on TV at that point is. They do lose a little bit of credibility. There was the amount of stuff that Pete Dunne sort of goes out there and sort of says, "Oh no, it's all right. The British independent wrestling is going to be absolutely fine. Don't worry about it." All this sort of stuff. It's like, well, it's very easy for you to say when you've got your much higher contract and you're basically leaving everything behind. Yeah. It's a little bit jarring, to say the least, on those sort of situations. So if NXT UK does fold, I will feel bad for those guys who are obviously losing a bit of money, but at the same time, hopefully the independent scene will continue to thrive when everything comes back to normal, and they can then go in and help make independent wrestling in Britain and Europe better than it was before they left.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this situation, if it affects NXT UK more, it may be because over the last couple of years, it has been the story that WWE were locking people down, whereas at first WWE were working with more open contracts. Well, when I say contracts, it was like they would bring people in, but they could still wrestle anywhere, and then suddenly, the doomsday came where they just locked everyone down. And all it means, in one sense, to me, is I would like to see NXT continue and evolve, no pun intended on evolve, but I would like to see it continue and grow into something more. I'd hate for it to not come back after this situation, because I still think, in spite of that, there's enough other wrestlers where they can now have an opportunity to shine and rise up. And as WWE have found with all of the people that they've been releasing recently, when they've just had huge numbers of people under contract, is signing up everyone just means that a lot of people don't end up getting used. You only need so many. So there's still enough spots. There can be Coke, there can be Pepsi as well. So in that same sense.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page there.
Yeah. Right. Great stuff, guys. I think we will wrap it up there on ScrapperMania 5. Hopefully,
if anyone listening or watching who wants to watch it themselves, it is free on OTT on demand.
Yeah, which is Over the Top Wrestling. Oh, okay. So I don't know if this is the website, but the link you sent me, if I just have it, that you sent, it was overthetopwrestling.pivotshare.com, which is interesting.
Then stop there. That'll take you to the site. And I don't know if they're doing any trials, but it's only like €8 or something like that a month. So it's not too bad. And there's, if anyone wants to watch, you guys yourselves, and obviously anyone else watching and listening wants to see any more independent wrestling and things like that, there are loads of places out there that are doing free trials and things like that. People ones off the top of my head I'd recommend Progress doing a 2-week trial, Ref Pro doing a 2-week trial, Riptide down in Brighton. They are really good quality, really good quality production as well. Hopefully we'll get onto one of their shows at some point, which I'd like to show you, let you guys on Riptide. That'd be great.
Yeah.
There's obviously things like the High Spots Network, There's IWTV, independentwrestling.tv. Most of them will do trials. Powerslam.tv, they do really good trials as well. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff to see out there, and a lot of it's of very good standard.
Oh, cool. Well, like I say, I'm happy for us to check out some more of their shows, going forward, and we can mix it in with some of the, like, I'm not sure how long it is till Money in the Bank and stuff, but we can certainly cover that. We've got Double or Nothing, which will be, I think, at the end of this month, the AEW show, for whatever form that will take. So yeah, there's still lots. I said when we covered WrestleMania, it's like we may not have another live wrestling show to cover, but there's lots of indie stuff that we won't have seen, and yeah, there will still be some live stuff to cover as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though arguably they shouldn't be doing any live wrestling because it's kind of dangerous at the minute.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you seen some promotions have been doing socially distant matches?
No.
So basically,
is this the Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan?
Yeah. So I saw recently someone was running towards somebody, and then the other guy went like that, but was 2 meters away, and then he performed a choke slam without actually touching the guy, and the other guy just kind of went.
Yeah. That was right before the sort of like the lockdown started in the States, and that's from GCW, Game Changer Wrestling. It's a social distance match between Joey Janela and Alex. I can't remember the other guy's name. Jimmy Lloyd. That's it. Yeah, he does exactly that, and yeah, it's interesting stuff. But that's on IWTV.
This is my best Joey Janela impression.
Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're such a bad boy.
I am. Guys. Yeah, so lots to check out. This was great. So until next time, everyone.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show, though.
Yeah. But until next time, let's find out where we can find people. Starting with you, Dave.
You can find me on Twitter @DanGreeno. You can find me on my acting pages on Facebook, David Anthony Green. And you can find me tonight in the next 2 hours. 2 hours time, I'll be doing a film and TV quiz here on Facebook, and it'll be on my own page. I'll have an event page. I'll pop that in the comments at the moment. But it's Director Dave's movie and TV quiz. So just search for that. All with me.
Fantastic, Sam.
You can find me in the places that you can see behind me here. So that's on Facebook, Sam George Performer, and on Twitter and Instagram you can see me @Samuel O. George.
Oh, George. Oh, George.
Oh, you devil.
Oh,
well, you'd said that it was becoming a thing, that we were just getting more disappointed as we were saying it.
Was last night, it was a massive groan.
Oh.
I'm just going to do it as Zippy from Rainbow now. Oh, George.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is David Postansky. You can find me @David Postansky, which is spelled PUSTANSKY, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This is the Superkick Mania Pro Wrestling Podcast, which you can watch the video version of on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and everywhere else where we share everything, Mixer and so on and so forth. But also, so yeah, by all means go over to YouTube and click the subscribe at youtube.com/Extreme Improv. Superkick Mania also has its own Twitter, @SuperkickMania on Twitter. The rest of this, what we're saying, this is part of the Extreme Improv Podcast Network, so along with the rest of the Extreme Improv Podcast, of which there are many, you can find most of them just by typing Extreme Improv into any of the major podcast apps. So you can find the Superkick Mania one along with the others on iTunes and Google Podcasts and on Spreaker and Spotify and everywhere else where you find podcasts. So until next time, this has been myself, Sam and Dave. This is the Superkick Mania Pro Wrestling Podcast. Thank you so much, and bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. And now here comes the moment where I haven't got this actually ready to end the show. Bye now.
I'm not going to say anything inappropriate.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Ignition sequence start.